Hey guys! This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was an Otsutsuki. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start! Chapter 6. Slowly the days had turned into weeks, those weeks into months, and those months into years, and before he knew it, Naruto was over 3,000 years old. He'd seen mountains crumble, towns and villages rise and fall, even watched the slow turn of evolution. Kaguya was right when she said that humanity would turn chakra into a weapon. Not even 50 years later, after Hagoromo's death, the first signs of ninjutsu appeared. Spurred on by the sightings and rumors of battles from Indra and Azura, humanity perverted ninjutsu into a violent art form that became the new weapon to have. Using hand signs, commonly called hand seals, to supplement for their lack of instinctive control over their chakra, the rest of the world learned to manipulate the elements, much like Hagoromo could, giving the world a new weapon to conquer with. The hand seals appeared to be like seals for the human body, directing the chakra where to go and what to do. Elemental manipulation was a place where Naruto saw elements of his own chakra. Pure elemental manipulation was used to gain better control and recognition with their alien elements, not a style of attack. Apparently, it was hard to gain control over the elements, and nobody could be bothered to try. Naruto had watched as they perverted Hagoromo's dream of peace into a weapon to wage war, though Naruto had gone on a rage like many others might have, overseeing their siblings' dream crushed in such a way. Naruto had time to resign himself to the fact that it would eventually happen, having watched the slow progression. However, there was something he had discovered that made him want to bring Hagoromo back to life just to kick his ass. His own abilities had been copied. When his chakra had been introduced to the people of the world, so had his abilities. It had taken years before they had shown up, but they were there. Multiple people had started to turn up wielding his abilities. His ability to use sub-elements had been spread out across the world, and the people who had turned up and started to group together. His ability to manipulate his body also spread around the world as well, the people that had turned up and grouping together, much like those that gained the ability to use sub-elements. Thankfully though, it appeared that only one Tier 3 element, dust, appeared. Naruto didn't even think about what would happen if people got Tier 3 elements from him. His eyes, healing, and his chakra construct's ability didn't appear in anyone. Thankfully, Naruto theorized that his eyes were more of a physical trait than one caused by chakra, hence it would only activate in blood relatives. Naruto was undecided if no one got his healing or chakra constructs. The world did have the ability to heal one another and themselves, but not passively. Similarly, Naruto had seen what the rest of the world called chakra scalpels and chakra threads. Naruto was unsure if they were his abilities, but as far as he knew, every chakra user could use them. So he was unsure if that was their chakra being able to do that naturally, or if it was the result of that ability being stretched over the world. Regardless of what happened with his abilities, when Naruto first found out of the world not only perverting his brother's dream, but then using his own abilities to do it. Let's just say that the land of wind wasn't always a desert. In the end, he decided not to end all life on Earth. His 3,000 years of life hasn't been all bad. During the time, Naruto had managed to make contact with almost all of the original summons that he and Hagoromo had originally created, as well as some that Hagoromo must have created after they parted ways. Several of the summons had permitted him to sign their summoning scrolls. Many of summons had been ecstatic to find out that he was still alive, though many of them had lost their founding members and thus didn't know who he was, or were enemies of some of the summons whose scroll he had already signed and therefore wouldn't allow him to sign their scrolls. Naruto didn't even know how they started fighting, but decided to let them handle it, unless it got too out of control. Naruto had also been watching over his own descendants as well as Hagoromo's. He was sad to say that he was mostly unimpressed. The Hyuga had become arrogant with their eyes, believing that because they had the Byakugan, they were invincible. What sickened Naruto the most, though, was that he found out they enslaved the branch family members with a caged bird seal. If Naruto hadn't loved Mushiya, he would have wiped them of the earth for the seal. Thankfully, other than their arrogance and seal, the Hyuga had mostly turned out well. though Naruto still rarely visited them. Just because he accepted that his son's descendants were enslaving their own family doesn't mean he'd like, so he kept his distance from the clan of Byakugan users, only popping in once every 100 or 200 years. The Uchiha and Senju were still fighting. Granted, it wasn't still about who was Hagoromo's successor, but it was still fighting. Both clans had a large territory, each causing their borders to clash in the middle of the Land of Fire. This also caused many small skirmishes which eventually led to war between the two clans, with the Uchiha having allies in the Hagoromo clan, ironically, and the Senju have allies in the form of the Uzumaki clan, once again ironic. Though the Uzumaki tried not to get involved, their help involved sending the Senju seals to aid them in battle. From strengthening weapons to explosive tags, the Uzumaki made up for their lack of help in the fighting with the amount and quality of their seals. The Uzumakis were the only relatives of Naruto that he could say he was proud of. While not wanting to fight, they still helped their allies. That was something Naruto could respect, though Naruto could tell the Uzumaki would prefer if there was no fighting. They would, however, fight viciously if they had to. Naruto was quite happy that the Uzumaki had decided to specialize in Fuinjutsu. While not one of the most exciting of arts for the most part, Fuinjutsu defiantly had the most potential out of the other arts. So it pleased Naruto to see that same art protecting his descendants, even if Naruto had to sometime help them when it came to some theories, though he was in disguise when he went to visit. The only part he was disappointed in was that the Uzumaki were reduced to work as mercenaries, though in this time, almost everyone was a mercenary. So he let that slide. Throughout the millennia that Naruto had been alive, he had traveled around the world, taking in the sights and sounds of the elemental nations. He had kept up his training, of course, creating new techniques and expanding on his old ones. He even managed to discover new elements. Granted, they were tier 3 and therefore incredibly destructive, but he did it. As it turned out, no one knew of him as the brother of Rikudo Sennin. In fact, the rest of the world wasn't even aware that one of the most famous people in history had a brother. Apparently his brother had never told people exactly how he defeated the Ten Tails. And as far as Naruto knew, Hagoromo hadn't recorded what happened in any form. Naruto wanted it to stay this way. He wanted a peaceful life, though he had resigned to the fact that it never would be. Going around announcing to the world that he was the brother of the Sage of Six Paths would not only make people look at him weird, but also draw unwanted attention to himself. It was to this reason why he refrained from using his control over the elements on a large scale. For small things, it was fine, but unless he was really pushed to his limits by a foe, which he doubted, or was angry, he'd refrain from doing anything that might make himself stand out. He'd usually take out his foes with his blades, which were always strapped around his forearms like braces, or his unarmed combat skills, which included his enhanced strength, and sometimes using chakra constructs if he felt like it. Because of believing that ninjutsu was a perversion of chakra, Naruto has never made any attempt to learn any of the jutsus that the rest of the world used. Why would he? Any elemental attacks thrown at him, he could deflect with a thought, and any physical attacks wouldn't get very far when he could literally destroy mountains with his enhanced strength. All in all, Naruto felt like ninjutsu was actually taking chakra backwards. He could do what the rest of the world was doing easily. He could even take it up a level. Naruto honestly wondered how the rest of the world could value their precious ninjutsu when he could destroy it with a thought. Though Naruto had no problem with any of the other arts such as Tai Dash, Gen Dash, Bukijutsu, or any of those techniques, they had all existed hundreds of years ago but were known simply under different names, so Naruto didn't really have a problem with any of them. Though he did have a problem with Juinjutsu, the ability to control someone against their will reminds Naruto too much of his mother's Mugen Tsukimi, Infinite Moon Reader. Naruto sighed as he continued walking, making no sound as his feet struck the ground one after the other. He was wearing a plain brown cloak with a hood to cover the clothes underneath, choosing to go for stealth more than show. He was currently walking through the border of the Uchiha and Senju territories, and while he wasn't nervous about being in the vicinity of any of the clan members, he didn't like being in their presence very long. It always reminded him of his promise to Hagoromo. For several hundred years after he first made that promise, Naruto had watched over the Uchiha and Senju clans, hoping that one of each, or maybe even just one from either, would look past their hatred over violence and strive for peace. There had been several close calls over that time, but all of the ones he had seen had either lost a sibling afterwards and began to hate, or had died before he could help. After that, he had just given up hope that there would ever be a change in either clan. Naruto was currently making his way to the south of Fire Country. There were great beaches this time of year. Stood behind me on purpose, didn't you? Naruto was knocked out of his thoughts by a loud voice echoing through the trees. It was loud and irate, most likely frustrated from not being able to complete something. It's so obvious you're trying to distract me. I can't even take a leak if someone is standing behind me. That's how aware of my surroundings I am. That was definitely weird. With his curiosity now piqued, Naruto made his way over to the source of the noise. His curiosity was satisfied when he spied two boys on the opposite side of a river to him. Both had black hair, though one had short, spiky hair while the other's hair was flat on his head. The spiky-haired one was wearing a pure black, knee-length haori with white pants, while the other with flat hair wearing pinstriped kimono pants and kimono shirt. The two boys appeared to be talking, with the one with flat hair antagonizing the one with spiky hair into outbursts of anger. This actually reminded him of himself and Hagoromo when they were little, him being the flat-haired one, needlessly annoying the spiky-haired one, Hagoromo, causing him to get angry at him. Naruto could only give a wistful smile at the two boys. He wished he could go back to the monastery, to when he was kid with Hagoromo and his mother, but he couldn't and never would be able to. That was something he had learned long ago. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts by the soft tapping of feet on water. Water walking. He thought that was something else he had picked up, though Naruto had learned it before anyone else, and the world recreated it. The flat-haired boy was checking on a body in the middle of the river, standing on top of the water. Both boys talked for a bit before the spiky-haired one turned back, while the flat-haired boy was now on his side of the river and was also walking away, most likely to wherever he lived. Naruto hid himself in the brush, using his millennia-old knowledge to hide himself from the sight and senses of the child. Once he felt safe, Naruto let out a breath and relaxed. This was interesting. A Senju and Uchiha, he said out loud as no one would hear him. He knew who both of them were. The boys were wearing the clothes of their clans, if they both knew that Naruto didn't know. Talking together without hostility with a member of the Hagoromo clan washing up near them both. If that isn't a sign, then I don't know what is. Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, he said, remembering the names they gave to each other. They will both be names to remember. It was settled. He would stay here to see how both of them developed, perhaps maybe even train them a bit if they didn't die. This meant that his trip to the beaches of Fire Country would have to wait. Naruto let out another sigh. He liked the beach. Why did the Senju and Uchiha decided to stop being assholes now? Why not years ago? Naruto decided to not look a gift horse in the mouth and just take what he could get. He didn't want to have to wait another 3 millennia to happen. It was 3 days before the two boys appeared at the same time again. Hashirama was sitting by the side of the river when Madara approached from behind, both of them in the same clothes as the day before. Naruto remained hidden on the other side of the river, bent down hiding in the brush, listening in on their conversation. Hashirama's brother had died apparently, along with 3 of Madara's own. This made Naruto release a small sigh of sorrow, not enough for either boy to hear thankfully. During these times, everyone was a warrior, a fighter. Children learned to fight before they could walk. Naruto had once seen a clan to the far east send a 7-year-old child out to fight against full-grown men of an opposing clan. The child was slaughtered but provided a distraction long enough for the more skilled and seasoned fighters to take down the real enemy. Naruto had to restrain himself from destroying that clan. Hashirama's brother's fate was not a rare one. Every day hundreds of boys just like him are sent out to kill their clan's enemies. It's only the lucky or skilled ones that come back. That is the sad truth. Focusing back on the conversation, Naruto managed to catch both of the children talking about wanting to stop the fighting before both of Hagoromo's descendants had stopped talking. The two of them were now just looking out over the water. While they did this, Naruto weighed up his options. He could not do anything. Let the two of them forge their own destinies, making their own mistakes. let them both see if they had what it takes to see their dreams to the end. Or help them personally. Naruto hasn't had much human interaction since Hagoromo's death. The perversion of chakra only made his human interaction shrink that much more. Talking to these two children would actually be a massive step for him, even if it was only for the day. Naruto let out a sigh when he realized there was only one option. He needed to help the Uchiha and Senju child. His promise to Hagoromo wouldn't let him leave. He had a chance to fulfill his promise to Hagoromo, and he would make sure it happened. With his thoughts decided, Naruto extended his legs, jumping high into the air, over the brush and river and onto the other side of the river where Hashirama and Madara were. Both boys were immediately on guard when he landed, legs and arms extended into their clan's fighting stances. Though judging by the obliviousness of the two, either of them knew what their enemies' fighting stances looked like, and hopefully it would stay that way so he could work with them. Naruto straightened up and brushed some imaginary dust of his cloak with his hand before he turned to the two children to the side of him, his hood up obscuring his face. "Relax, I'm not going to hurt you," the ancestor of the Hyuga and Uzumaki said nonchalantly. Immediately, Hashirama relaxed. "Oh cool," he said with a smile. Madara smacked him on the back of the head for that comment. "You stupid idiot, why did you believe him?" Madara screamed. "He could be lying, waiting for us to lower our guard so he could kill us." As he finished his rant, Hashirama then sat on the ground with a small rain cloud hovering over his head. Naruto gave a small amused smile before he cleared his throat to get Hashirama's and Madara's attention. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. "I'm not going to hurt you," Naruto repeated. "In fact, I want to help you both, by training both of you." "Why should we believe you?" Madara accused, instantly suspicious. "And how do we know we can trust you or you can teach us anything?" Naruto gave out a small chuckle at Madara's accusations. "Because if I wanted to harm you, you would both be dead," he said simply. It was true, and he wasn't going to sugarcoat. "As for trusting, have I hurt you yet?" Madara lowered his guard hesitantly, but Naruto could still see he was ready to spring into guard at a moment's notice. "Take off your hood then," the Uchiha said. "If you want to help us, take it off." Indra's descendant was staring at Naruto's hood as if he could move it with his mind. Even Hashirama was looking up from his position on the ground, interested in the newcomer's features. Naruto simply shrugged. "Okay." With that, Naruto lowered the hood that shadowed his face to reveal his bright white hair that trailed down into the cloak, and a blindfold that covers his eyes, though it was frayed enough so that both boys could see the whiteness of Naruto's eyes. The blindfold Naruto was wearing was to prevent any sort of links between him and the Hyuga, as he would have to explain why none of them recognized him, or why there weren't any records of birth. After a while, he learned that the blindfold, plus the visible whites of his altered Byakugan, gave off the impression that he was blind, which made people underestimate him. After all, who would expect a blind man to know how to fight? Naruto used his advanced. Naruto had used his ability to manipulate his bones, an ability that he had discovered several years after Hagoromo's death and was used by a clan in the Land of Water, to hide his horns, making it easier to blend in. After all, horns were quite noticeable. Hashirama and Madara were taken back by the blindfold, having not expected their acquaintance to be blind. Madara recovered from the surprise of the blindfold first. "How would you be able to teach us to do anything, in case you haven't noticed you're blind? How can you be a shinobi when you can't even see where you're going?" Madara said, a bit bluntly. Surprisingly, it was Hashirama that spoke. "Then how come you couldn't sense him? You're the one who was so aware of his surroundings he couldn't take a leak if someone is behind him," Hashirama said with a small snigger and a smile. Naruto also had a small smirk at the comments. Madara rounded on the still-seated Hashirama, and then proceeded to yell at him. "Shut up, Hashirama, you didn't sense him either, so I owe you dash." Madara's yells were cut off when he felt something sharp poke him in the back of the neck. He froze immediately. He had felt points in the back of his neck before. It was usually from when his father, Uchiha Taijima, beat him in a spar and had a kunai to his neck. Looking down at Hashirama's face, he hoped that he could get a picture of what was going on from his new friend's face. Looking down, Madara saw Hashirama's eyes opened wide surprise, which let the Uchiha know all he needed. Apparently the newcomer was now behind him with a kunai or something pointy to his neck. Now, Naruto said in his ear. Are you sure there is nothing I can teach you? Naruto asked with mock curiosity. There might be something, Madara replied, trying to keep his voice light. He felt the sharp point remove itself from his neck and Madara slowly turned around, only to see the cloaked-wearing figure standing back where he was before, looking like he hadn't done anything. Now, how about introductions? The man replied as if nothing had happened. My name is Naruto. The newly named Naruto introduced himself. Hashirama, the flat-haired boy said cheerily, happy to introduce himself to the blind man. Madara, the Uchiha said hesitantly, still not fully trusting the man. Why should he? The man comes out of nowhere offering to train the two of them for no reason. It had suspicious written all over it. Before I agree to anything, the Uchiha's suspicious attitude back up. Why would you train us? Out of all the people in the world to train, why us? And how did you move so fast even though you're blind? Madara questioned. Naruto gave a sad smile before answering. I made a promise to someone that involves training people to help the world. I overheard what the two of you were talking about, heard the conviction in your voice, and decided that I would train you to fulfill the promise I made. Naruto then gained a cheeky smile. If you want to find out how I move so fast, you'll have to beat it out of me. He replied to Madara's question, before he took up a loose taijutsu stance with a grin. Either come at me with the intent to kill, or not at all. Both Madara and Hashirama both then took up their respective stances, ready to attack their new sensei. However, both of them wouldn't go all out. He was blind after all, he can't be that good. They didn't know how wrong they were. Half an hour later, both Hashirama and Madara were laying on the rocky shores of the river they had been skipping rocks across, tired and sweaty. They would have been bruised and broken too if their new sensei hadn't healed them when they finished. Both of them were sure that Naruto was somehow reading their minds. He seemed to be able to read their styles like a book. Every one of their moves or combinations seemed to be countered by their white-haired sensei. He seemed to move as fast as lightning yet be as versatile as water. He blocked every punch, countered every kick, he even made their jutsu useless, simply too fast for them to aim, and in the event they did manage to successfully pull on of, he simply dodged out of the way. It was amazing, yet at the same time, it was frustrating. So, Naruto said, a glint of laughter in his gaze. Do you want me to teach you both, or do you need more convincing that I can teach you things? It was incredibly amusing to see two prodigies so soundly defeated, even if he was a millennia-old male that had so much chakra that it was on the level of the Biju, with enough power to level a continent. Still, Hashirama and Madara didn't know that. As far as they were concerned, they just got beaten up for half an hour by blind man that was about the age of most of the people they used for training. If Naruto hadn't had millennia to keep his emotions under control, he would have burst out laughing. Okay, Hashirama said, sitting up, wincing as he did so. I think you can teach us some things. I definitely felt several things I can work on. He winced again as he rubbed his sore ribs. Damn, why did Naruto's kicks have to be so hard? By this time, Madara had also sat up as well, managing to withhold a wince unlike Hashirama. Naruto looked at his possible pupils, his quite hurt pupils. He sighed, why did people have to be so fragile? He was toning down his strength. Stepping forward, Naruto squatted down on his heels in between Hagoromo's descendants, bright green chakra coating his hands, something both boys recognized as medical chakra. Naruto moved his hands forward and a hand hovering in front of either boy's chest before he flexed his chakra, sending it into their bodies to begin healing. His chakra traveled around their bodies and began identifying their injuries. Fractured ribs, bruised muscles and bones as well as torn muscles were several problems in both boys' bodies. Nothing serious or life-threatening, their injuries were those that could be gained from rough training. Other than that, both boys were as healthy as they should be, no sickness, old injuries, or any signs of malnutrition. Naruto assessed all that in a second, his experience with using the technique on various people before coming into play. Pushing his chakra into the injured areas, Naruto watched from his mind's eye as all the injuries healed, fractures knitted back together, torn muscles reattached themselves, and bruised body parts healed over. Hashirama and Madara were in shock at their sensei's skill in medical chakra. Their injuries would normally take an experienced Irionin several minutes to heal the both of them, yet this man was healing the both of them within seconds. It was unbelievable. Hashirama especially seemed amazed by his sensei's ability. He had always wanted to learn to heal, but his ability in ninjutsu, specifically his Kekkei Genkai, Mokuton, his sub-elements made him too valuable to be wasted doing the work of someone without skill, as his father would say. Essentially, his father was saying that he was too skilled not to have at the front. Perhaps Naruto could train him in medical techniques. Hashirama would love to learn some. Madara was now reevaluating the man in front of him. Originally, when he had showed he was blind, Madara had been incredibly skeptical that Naruto could even run, let alone fight. That was then proved wrong when the white-haired man proceeded to beat both him and Hashirama up for 30 minutes. He was hailed as a prodigy in his clan. He could take down full-grown men with twice as much experience as him, and yet he was utterly humiliated by the man that was currently healing him with medical skill that far exceeds anything he had seen his clan's Irionin could perform. "So," Naruto began, "do you two want me to train you both?" he asked. This would decide how he went on from here. They could either decide to let him train them, or they could decline. Naruto could train one of them, but he would rather train both of them. If he could train both of them, he would be fulfilling his promise to Hagoromo, and it would be a massive weight off his chest. Naruto always felt like he failed his brother by not completing his wish. It had been 3 millennia and there was no progress with either side. But if he could get the two of them to agree to him being their sensei, he would finally feel like he was accomplishing something. Hashirama nodded excitedly. It would be fun to have a sensei to help him. In his clan you usually had to train yourself. If you were lucky you could have an older brother or father to help you practice and perfect techniques. But since his father was the clan head, he rarely had time to help him. He was busy organizing the clan, practicing attacks, and honing his own skills. Hashirama was the eldest child in his family, and therefore had no older brother to practice with. He could usually find some other clan members that would train to spar with him, but they would refrain from hurting the clan head's son. But with Naruto as his sensei, he could have someone that he wouldn't hold back and help him advance further. Naruto might even have a way to achieve peace in the world. Perhaps he could get advice. Madara stiffly nodded as well. He still wasn't quite sure about Naruto, but he was smart enough to realize that after that fight that Naruto could kill them without trying. He even healed them after the fight. Madara was now quite aware that Naruto was mostly likely telling the truth about wanting to train them, but that didn't mean that he would trust him like Hashirama was doing. He would accept Naruto's offer until he proved untrustworthy. "Good," Naruto said happily as he stood up. Hashirama and Madara followed him swiftly. "I'm glad that both of you accepted." His face then turned from happy to serious. When he spoke, Madara and Hashirama had to suppress a shudder from the feeling he gave off. It wasn't killing intent. Both had been under Ki enough to be able to tell what it was, but it was similar. What Naruto was doing was actually an altered form of killing intent. While normal Ki was the user's desire to kill mixed with their power that was then pressured onto their opponent, Naruto's version was his aura, the natural power that all beings naturally excluded, wrapping around Hashirama's and Madara's own. This caused Hashirama and Madara to feel the same feeling a wolf feels in the presence of their alpha on a smaller scale. Both Hashirama and Madara were feeling compelled to listen to him, like a pack of wolves to their alpha. When he was sure they were listening to him, Naruto spoke, his tone of voice enforcing how serious he was. "When I'm training you both, I expect several things. This is non-negotiable." Naruto's voice implied that there would be no compromise. "When I'm training you, you do what I say when I say it. You never use anything I show you to enslave the free will of another being. Both of you are to tell no one of me, your training, or each other. If anyone finds out about our training, I will stop." What was visible of Naruto's eyes softened behind his blindfold. "One day, I will no longer be your sensei and you two will no longer be my students. On that day, I wish for both of you to strive for peace." Naruto held up his hand as he saw that Hashirama had opened his mouth. No, I will not be telling you how to find peace, Hashirama. That is for the two of you to agree upon, but remember this, is peace worth the price that must be paid to get there? If you follow my rules, then I will train you both, but break them. Naruto's voice hardened, becoming as cold as ice. And I break you? If there is one thing I hate, it is those that go back on their word, so both of you decide right now, are you willing to become my pupils, knowing the terms to this agreement? Yes. Hashirama answered. He had thought over Naruto's conditions and come to the conclusion that he wouldn't have done anything that would have violated the set rules anyway. Maybe the one I'm training you, you do what I say when I say it rule, but that was because he liked to be annoying. He wondered about Madara though, he couldn't speak for him, and wondered what his spiky-haired friend would do, but he was confident that he would accept. Both Madara and himself would make the world a better place. They would make it so children could be children instead of fighters. The world would become how it was meant to. I accept. Madara gave his answer before asking his own question. You still didn't answer how you could fight if you're blind, the Uchiha pointed out. Madara knew that as soon as he saw the blind man's skill that he would agree to Naruto's request and become the man's student. The power that the man had would make him get stronger, and with Hashirama, they would find peace. It was only a matter of how strong and influential both himself and Hashirama got. He would use his power to bring peace to the world and keep his little brother safe from the horrors of war. Good. Naruto smiled. He was finally fulfilling Hagoromo's wish and helping his descendants onto the right path. Perhaps Hashirama and Madara could change the rest of their clan. Perhaps they wouldn't, but at least Naruto could now say he tried. To answer your question, Madara, I spread my chakra out so that it encompasses a large area. As objects move inside that area, images are sent back into my brain, creating a black and white image of the area inside the area, allowing me to see without seeing. Madara and Hashirama didn't need to know that he wasn't blind. That would raise questions that would make him uncomfortable. Since it's only just past midday, you two are going to do some sparring so I can identify the flaws in your styles. Both of you ready? Naruto questioned. Hashirama turned to Madara and settled into a fighting stance with a small smile on his face. Come on, Madara, let's go! The Senju exclaimed. He really wanted to test out how strong he was against his friend, and this was the best time to do it. Madara also settled into a fighting stance at his new sensei's words, a smirk on his face in contrast to Hashirama's smile. Let's dance, Hashirama, the Uchiha said. You could feel the underlying excitement in his voice. The Uchiha clan heir knew that Hashirama would be his rival, the one that would make him better himself, the one that would make him want to go that little bit further during training. It would be Hashirama that give him an added drive to get stronger. Begin! Naruto shouted as he watched the two rush each other, exchanging punches and kicks, and then eventually, jutsu. A punch impacted Hashirama's face while Hashirama's leg found itself buried in the side of Madara's stomach, forcing both of them to skid back along the ground before charging and once more, re-engaging. All the while Naruto watched with a small smile on his face as he watched his newly acquired pupils battle it out, the fight getting more intense as their rivalry solidified. It was then Naruto decided that his two pupils would be the sum of the best fighters in the world. Their names would be written down in the history books, their faces carved into mountains, and their strength would be memorized in the eyes of the world as two of the best. Naruto would make sure of that. But Naruto-sensei, Hashirama whined, I want to learn some cool jutsu. Why can't you teach us any? I beat you no heaps and you're keeping it from us. Hashirama finished his whining/accusation with a pout. Naruto reined in a sigh. How in Kami's name did he ever think that Hashirama resembled him? There was no way that he was this annoying as a kid. If he was, his mother would have beaten it out of him. Come on, sensei, please, 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 please dash. Kami, damn it, Hashirama. If you say please one more time, I'm gonna see how far my foot will fit up your arc. Madara snapped and as usual, yelled at Hashirama. Naruto was seriously reconsidering teaching these two. After almost 6 months of training with them, Naruto had realized that even though they could be mature, Hashirama and Madara were still children, 11-year-old children to be precise. After 3 months of training, Hashirama had asked the question that Naruto was waiting for: when are we going to be learning some super awesome jutsu? Of course, Naruto didn't know any jutsu but didn't tell Hashirama or Madara that, as the two might drop him as their sensei. Naruto then told the two that he wasn't going to teach them any jutsu but instead teach them how to become more connected to their element, or elements in the case of his two pupils. Madara became a bit disgruntled about not learning any jutsu from his new sensei before Naruto told both him and Hashirama that if they wanted, they could learn jutsus on their own and then share it between each other. Both boys had instantly agreed to the plan and started to secretly give the other jutsus from their clan archives, not that the other knew. Hashirama gave Madara jutsu that involved fire and lightning, while the Senju heir got water and earth jutsus from the Uchiha heir. Hashirama then had to train his Kekkei Genkai, Mokuton. Madara was shocked that his rival had a sub-element, and, deciding to try to even the field, started to learn about the other 3 nature transformations: water, earth, and wind. Unfortunately, this had not satisfied Hashirama. He had decided that Naruto was keeping super cool jutsu from him and Madara. The Senju had now made it his mission to make Naruto quit being a jutsu hog and to teach him and Madara awesome super cool massive deluxe jutsu. Of course he hadn't gotten anywhere, but it was really starting to grate on Naruto's nerves. Currently, students and sensei were walking through the northern section of the forest. Naruto had decided to move their training grounds further north to avoid detection by either the Senju or Uchiha, as their previous grounds were right between the territories of the two clans. "I'm sorry, Madara," Hashirama sniffed. Naruto was now pinching the bridge of his nose. Why did Hashirama have to go from annoying to almost crying in a second? It made telling when the kid was actually sad a pain in the arse. "I'll spend the rest of my life paying you back for the horrible travesty I have caused." Great, now there was a dark cloud over his head. Naruto decided that he needs to hit something real hard, real soon. "I just hope you don't use me as a sex slave." "Oh great. I am not gay, you asshole!" Madara screamed in retaliation. Hashirama really succeeded in annoying Madara. Maybe him and Hashirama really were similar. "I noticed you have an interest in assholes," Hashirama replied with a small smile, mentally sniggering at his rival. Naruto had to shake his head at the comment. Screw being similar, Hashirama was his illegitimate child. Madara was about to start yelling again when a massive amount of oppressive chakra slammed into the 3 of them. Of course, to Naruto it was nothing, like comparing an ant to a giant. To Madara and Hashirama, however, it was the largest and most malicious chakra they had felt in their young lives. They had been into battle, yet both of them had never felt any kind of chakra like this. It made their skin crawl just standing near the edge of the source. Whatever was releasing this chakra was incredibly powerful, and it made both boys weary of moving forward. Both turned to their sensei, but were shocked to see him standing as if malicious chakra was an everyday occurrence. Both clan heirs missed their teacher's narrowed eyes. Naruto recognized this chakra. It was the chakra of Shikaku, otherwise known as the Ichibi, One-Tails. Naruto didn't know what it was doing in Fire Country, seeing as its home was the deserts of Wind Country. But judging by the amount of demonic chakra the Biju was releasing, it wasn't for a stroll through the woods. Over the millennia, Naruto had several interactions with each of the Biju, some of them friendly, some of them less than pleasant. After the death of Hagoromo, a few of the tail beasts resented him for, in their opinion, not doing enough to save his brother. The death of their father figure had been a major blow to all of the large animals. Their situation was similar to a child losing their father. Naruto had tried to help them, seeing as Hagoromo had considered them like his children, but many refused his help or company. Shikaku was one of them. The One-Tails had become short-tempered over the years. Kurama's belief that the more tails one had, the stronger, and humanity's belief that the Biju were mindless animals or evil demons had made Shikaku become slightly unstable. The Ichibi had started to attack villages over the years as its mental state deteriorated. This usually resulted in Naruto having to intervene if he was in the area. Naruto theorized that the Ichibi might just attack villages to get his attention, as the Tanuki would always grin like a lunatic when he showed up, Naruto didn't know whether to be disturbed that it thought attacking people was the right way to get attention or sad because it looked forward to seeing someone that it was meant to hate. "Naruto-sensei, what's happening?" Madara questioned, doing the best he could to keep the apprehension out of his voice. Naruto said nothing. Instead, he motioned with his hands for both himself and Hashirama to follow him. Moving forward, Naruto leapt at a tree using chakra to stick his feet to the bark, his students following his movements. The white-eyed man then ran up the tree, going to the top to get a better view. Naruto halted near the top of the tree, coming to a stop on a branch, his students landing beside him a second later. The tree was tall, giving the three people perched on its branches a view that traveled several kilometers into the distance, and it also gave the group of three a view over the source of the disturbance. A giant tanuki made of sand was wading through a small town a kilometer or two away, firing off bullets of air at the building around it, destroying them and the people that took shelter inside. The tanuki was hundreds of meters tall and towered over trees and buildings alike, crushing many of them as it walked, but continued walking as if it had stepped on an ant. The black markings all over its body gave the tanuki a demonic look, which was only reinforced by the occasional roar it let out as demolished the town. The tail protruding from its behind flattened anything in its path as it was swung from side to side. Its voice could be heard even from the distance the trio were from the tailed beast. "Come on, don't run away. I haven't even squished you yet," the tanuki said in glee as it continued to trample through the civilian town. Each step it took invoked screams of terror in the town's residents below. Naruto assessed the situation. Shikaku was waiting for him, that much was obvious. It wasn't using its Baijidama, tailed beast ball, to simply level the village in one go as it would have if it was serious about destroying the small town. His only option was to confront Shikaku and either convinces the one-tailed to stop or take it down and transport it away from the civilian population. "Madara, Hashirama!" Naruto snapped, shocking the two boys out of their staring. Neither of them had ever seen a tailed beast before. The sight of one, even though it was the weakest of them all, was still a monumental occasion for both of them. Even though either one of the boys had seen one, they had heard stories about them from their clan's veteran shinobi and elders. Each story spoke of the power to decimate hundreds of shinobi as if they were flies on hot summer's day. Both of Hagoromo's descendants turned towards their sensei as they awaited orders. "Both of you are to stay here while I deal with the Ichibi." Madara and Hashirama were shocked for a moment when they heard what their sensei planned on doing. He was talking about fighting a tailed beast. Even the Ichibi, the weakest of the 9, had the power to level an entire clan's worth of shinobi. Their sensei was planning on fighting that. Madara was the first to find his voice. "Sensei, you cannot be serious," he said, gaining Naruto's attention. "You are planning on fighting the One-Tail, something with enough power to destroy hundreds of shinobi. I do not doubt your skills, but don't you think this might be taking it too far?" Madara finished with his voice straining a bit, trying to carry across the seriousness of the situation. Because apparently his sensei didn't realize what he planned on doing. Naruto gave a small chuckle before turning to look back at the Ichibi, who had stopped rampaging for the moment, and appeared to be admiring its work. "I know both of you doubt my skills as a sensei," Naruto said, ignoring the denials coming from both Hashirama and Madara. He continued, "I know that because I am blind." Naruto mentally made air quotes when he said the word. "And because I haven't taught you any jutsu, that both of you have started to doubt me as a sensei. Do not both trying to deny this, I know it is true." His pupils said nothing to deny the claims, because they couldn't. They had started to doubt his skills ever since he hadn't taught them jutsus. If it wasn't for the fact that they had experienced how strong he was beforehand, they would have resigned as his students on the spot. "Because of this, I have decided that both of you must see how powerful I truly am if I want to keep you both permanently as my students." The two students were shocked. Their sensei was single-handedly going to fight a tailed beast to prove how strong he was to them. Before either of them could respond, Naruto continued, "I will also tell you both the reason why I can't teach you jutsu after this is over." Naruto was originally not going to tell them that he could do jutsu, which was true to an extent, but Shikaku's intervention provided an opportunity to get that roadblock out of the way. If he told them that he could use jutsu after defeating the One-Tail, it would seem like a small trade-off to his two students. While their sensei couldn't use jutsu, he could single-handedly defeat the One-Tails. He highly doubted that his two pupils would drop him as their sensei just after he defeated Shikaku, and it would prevent them from finding out later down the road. Hashirama was the one that objected this time. "Naruto-sensei, you don't have to dash." Hashirama was silenced as Naruto held up his hand, as a sign to stop speaking. "I will return, Hashirama, don't worry about that." Naruto gave a little smirk. "Remember, stay here and watch closely, this is something that you won't forget." With that, Naruto leapt of the branch and towards Shikaku, who had now continued trampling the village. "This is all our fault," Madara moaned as he sat down on the branch with his head in his hands. "If we hadn't valued jutsu so much, Naruto-sensei wouldn't be doing this," Madara said with guilt in his voice. Hashirama said nothing, but also sat down on the branch alongside his brother. What was there to say? They had just sentenced their sensei to death, albeit unintentionally. They watched as their sensei neared the town, traveling closer as he hopped from tree to tree, before finally he leapt out of the cover that the forest roof provided, jumping straight towards the belly of the Biju, his arm held back ready for a punch. Both of Naruto's students felt their guts sink. They wanted to tear their eyes away from seeing their sensei get turned into pulp, but they couldn't. As they watched their sensei close the distance between human and Biju, getting closer and closer, either boy could tear their eyes away, they would later be glad. Because what would happen next would stay with Hashirama and Madara for the rest of their lives as one of the most amazing things they had ever seen. Naruto, their sensei, punched the Ichibi square in the stomach with enough force to cause a shockwave to echo throughout the area, with both Hashirama and Madara feeling a blast of air rush over them, shaking the tree they were perched on. The Biju was lifted off the ground by the resulting force, and flung several hundred or so meters away. The One-Tail landed with a boom as it skidded across the ground, demolishing trees. Both clan heirs watched in shock at the power of their sensei, the one who had just punched the Ichibi with strength that nobody should possess. "Madara!" Hashirama muttered softly, staring at the recovering form of the Ichibi. "If I ever doubt the power of sensei again, please punch me in the face." Madara didn't look towards Hashirama, instead he responded with a request of his own. "Only if you do the same for me," Madara replied. "Deal." Hashirama agreed. "Deal," Madara repeated. When the Ichibi finally recovered, it looked around searching for the one who hit it, though it knew who it was. There was no one in the elemental nations with the strength to rival him. "Oh Naruto," the One-Tail sang in its mind. Come out wherever you are." Normally, Shikaku would have stayed in Wind Country, preferring the desert to the forests of Fire Country, but it was a little bit lonely, and while they never actually talked, it preferred the company of Naruto to no one. The white-haired man's presence reminded him of father, and the last Otsutsuki was the only human in the world that treated the Biju as more than monsters. A small flash of white out of the corner of its eye drew the One-Tail's attention. Reacting quickly, the Ichibi spun around with speed that it shouldn't have at the size it was and fired a compressed ball of air that crashed into a small pile of trees. The ball of wind exploded with incredible force, leveling trees 100 meters around the impact zone and knocking over several more with the force of the explosion. The Ichibi didn't relax its guard. It knew that was nowhere near enough to defeat its foe. In fact, that attack probably barely fazed Naruto. The man had millennia of experience with Shikaku's attacks. Sure enough, Shikaku felt a small source of repressed chakra creeping up behind him. "Got ya now." Quick as a flash, the Ichibi spun around and swung its tail in the direction of the chakra source, leveling trees as its tail scraped against the ground. The tail collided with the area and kept going as Shikaku turned around to face where the chakra last was, only to find the area empty except for uprooted trees that came into contact with its tail. Looking around wearily, the weakest of the tailed beasts failed to notice the passenger that it had picked up on its tail, hanging onto the end of the single tail. Naruto held on, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came when Shikaku had relaxed a bit and lowered its tail to the ground. The moment that Naruto's feet touched the ground, he utilized his enhanced strength and flipped Shikaku's tail over his shoulder. The reaction was a roar of pain and surprise from the one-tail as its tail was yanked and it was pulled backwards, off the ground before it slammed back down, rolling a bit before it came to a halt. The Ōtsuki was about to get back up and regain its footing so that it could get back into the fight with Naruto when it felt the man land on his nose and look directly into his eyes. Shikaku was nervous when Naruto continued to stare. After a minute, despite wanting to fight Naruto, it knew that the long-lived man was way above its level in both power and skill. It only really enjoyed Naruto's company and would rather they actually talk than fight, so the serious stare that Naruto pinned it under was quite uncomfortable. The one-tail was about to comment before Naruto broke of the stare, and gave Shikaku a small smile under softer eyes. "If you want," the white-haired man said, "we could talk every now and then instead of fighting." The Biju was shocked for a moment. Did Naruto see through the reason for his attacks? He was about to reject Naruto's proposition when the man in question spoke. "I know the reason for your attacks, Shikaku. If you want company, all you had to do was ask. So, would you like for use to talk instead of fighting?" Naruto asked again, his voice hiding no hidden agendas, no malicious intent or other reasons for putting forward the question. With hesitancy, the large tanuki nodded its head. Naruto's smile grew a little larger before he spoke again to the tanuki. "I can visit you later today if you want, but your little excursion to the village made me interrupt something that I need to continue. So, if you go back to Wind Country, I'll visit you there by the end of the day," Naruto said with a smile that grew bigger when he saw the happiness in the Biju's eyes, though Naruto had to make his voice keep the same light tone when he talked about the tanuki's excursion. Naruto had long since stopped calling the Biju on the little value they place on human life. They all answered with the same response when he did, "If they can do it to themselves, then why can I do it to them?" Naruto still didn't have a response to that. The Biju found it hard to hold human life with any sort of value after millennia of them killing each other, and eventually they all developed the mentality of if they can do it, why can't I? They all basically thought that since humans could kill each other with such little consequences, then why couldn't they? After all, there were plenty of them. Naruto had just stopped calling them on it eventually, as he never got anywhere when he did. Naruto leapt off the giant sand tanuki as it lifted itself up and started to move itself quickly in the direction of the deserts of Wind Country. Apparently his visit is going to mean more to Shikaku than he first realized. When he was sure that the Biju was making his way to the land of wind, Naruto then started to make his way back to where he left Hashirama and Madara. Hopefully the two of them hadn't moved from the position in which he left them. It took him all of 5 minutes to reach the branch where he left the clan heirs, and the moment he landed he was bombarded with questions from both sides. Naruto simply stood there with a small smile on his face as he watched the two of them, especially Madara. The Uchiha, while not as aloof as the rest of his clan, was normally composed unless Hashirama provoked him, so it was quite funny to watch the clan heir slowly get red in the face as kept firing off questions instead of breathing. "Calm down, you two." Both heirs still continued to shoot off questions. "Calm down," Naruto said a bit more forcefully. The questions continued and Naruto developed a tick mark on his forehead. "Shut up, brats." Finally that seemed to quiet the two of them down. "I know the two of you have questions, but let's first sit somewhere a bit more comfortable." With that, Naruto leapt off into the forest with his two pupils after him, who were both struggling not to shoot off questions. The trio stopped on top of a large plateau that rested on the border of the Uchiha and Senju clans. The view they had from the top was amazing. All three of them could see several kilometers out into the wilderness of the Land of Fire, which was just one massive forest. As soon as the tree landed, Naruto held up his hand to stop the barrage of questions he knew was going to come, before he then spoke to his two pupils. "I know the two of you have questions, so you all get to ask them one at a time, starting with Hashirama." Naruto gestured to the Mokuton user. Madara was a bit peeved at not being able to ask his question first but settled down quickly. "How did you do that?" Hashirama questioned immediately. This was followed by another question accompanied by puppy dog eyes. "Can you teach me, please?" Ajura's descendant battered his eyes at the white-haired man in an attempt to get him to agree. His work was for naught when his sensei spoke his next words. "Keep dreaming, Hashirama," Not only do you not have what is required to use it in the first place, but I don't think the world can take you having enhanced strength. Naruto shot down his student's plea in a heartbeat. There was nothing Kami or his brother could do that would make him give Hashirama Senju his secret to enhanced strength. It would spell doom for everyone. And what did I do? Hagoromo's brother knew what Hashirama was talking about, but just wanted to mess with him for the sake of it. Hashirama sat on the ground with a small rain cloud over his head and therefore didn't hear his sensei's answer for his first question. Madara did though. You know what Hashirama is talking about, Naruto-sensei, the Uchiha said. How did you manage to not only punch a biju and lift it off the ground, but also beat it? Madara stared into his sensei's eyes as he asked his questions. Naruto simply gave Madara a small smile. That's quite simple, Madara. What I did was called. Naruto paused for effect and watched as Madara leaned forward slightly, as did Hashirama from his seated position, rain cloud gone. Actually, I don't think I ever named it. A simultaneous crash was heard as both Madara and Hashirama tipped forward and face planted into the ground. Both quickly kicked up and were about to yell at their sensei when he answered the question seriously. I never named the technique I used when I fought the Ichibi, Naruto explained, remembering not to use the One-Tail's true name. What the technique does is enhances my strength tenfold, allowing me to punch through nearly anything. Naruto paused before he answered the second question. And I beat the Ichibi because it knew I could beat it. The One-Tail retreated because it knew it was beat. Naruto quickly made up the lie at the end, and using millennia of experience of lying and being lied to, Naruto made Hagoromo's descendants believe it. Naruto was a bit guilty that he had to lie to his two students, but considered it the lesser of two evils. If he told them the truth, they might consider him crazy. Sensei, Madara interrupted his thinking. You were going to tell us why you couldn't teach us jutsu. Naruto just let off a sigh and sat down with Hashirama, who had finally come out of his depression completely, prompting Madara to do the same. The reason I can't teach you ninjutsu. Naruto had to struggle not to say the word without any venom or loathing. Is because I don't know any. He watched and waited for both Madara's and Hashirama's reactions and wasn't disappointed. Both clan heirs had looks of shock and disbelief on their faces. It was Hashirama, surprisingly, who snapped out of their trance first. What do you mean you don't know any ninjutsu, sensei? Can you not perform them, or do you just not know any? The Senju heir inquired. It is exactly what it means, Hashirama, Naruto responded. Unlike the two of you, I never had any shinobi in my family and therefore never learned any elemental jutsus. This was a half-lie. Naruto didn't know any ninjutsu as in elemental techniques with hand seals. Naruto does, however, know elemental attacks. It was a simple play on words, but neither Hashirama nor Madara would pick up on it. Why should they? The two have most likely never heard of someone that can utilize elemental attacks without hand seals like he does. So you are saying you don't come from a shinobi clan of any kind? Madara prodded. When Naruto nodded his head in confirmation, both Senju and Uchiha heirs let out what they thought was an unnoticeable sigh of relief, though Naruto caught the action. While he was shocked that both children trusted him so easily, Naruto was happy that both of them trusted him enough to take his words as fact. The Senju and Uchiha clans both had enemies. Naruto saying that he wasn't from any clan meant that he, most likely, wasn't going to kill Hashirama nor Madara. This was excellent news for both clan heirs, as they highly doubted they could take down Naruto, especially after his last display of power. I have one announcement, Madara, Hashirama, Naruto said, causing Hagoromo's descendants to turn their gazes to him. I have decided to stop training you every time we meet. This caused both Hashirama and Madara to give their sensei a questioning look. They didn't train 7 days a week, or even 5. The trio trained 4 days a week, giving the two students plenty of time to rest while helping to avoid attention from their respective clans. Starting from today, I will only train you both 3 days a week while giving you both the 4th day to train together. This is to give you both a chance to bond and a sense of independence while I'm not there, as well as giving you some experience in training yourself. However, I will drop by at random to observe you both, and how you train. This was actually true. Naruto did want both Hashirama and Madara to bond without him there, and he felt that his presence prevented the two clan heirs from connecting on a deeper level. On this fourth day, Naruto was just going to observe them both to see how they were doing and to see if they could operate without his help. Can I trust you both to train without my supervision? Yes, sensei, was the response from the two boys. Good, Naruto said, giving the two of them a smile. If that is all the questions for now, I will let the two of you begin your training. Remember thought dash, no flashy techniques, and keep it quiet, was the simultaneous response from both boys. Good, Naruto said again. See you both tomorrow. With that, Naruto leapt away in the direction of Wind Country, leaving two boys to ponder what they were going to do. Hey Madara. Hashirama broke the silence. You remember how when we met Sensei, how the two of us were talking about keeping children out of fighting and all that? He received a nod from the spiky-haired boy. Hashirama gave Madara a smile as he continued. Well, I got this great idea. The idea is basically a whole bunch of clans and civilians come together in order to create a village of some kind dash. The Land of Wind was a series of deserts that was roughly between the size of the Land of Fire and the Land of Lightning. Despite the majority of the country being covered in sand, the country has a surprisingly large population that was focused in towns or villages around the centered on the many oases in the deserts. The deserts to the far west of the country were considered cursed or evil, due to the fact the Ichibi roamed the area, manipulating the vast seas of sand to swallow any unwary adventurer that wanders too close to its domain. Occasionally, the Biju would wander out of its home in search of prey. Though the Biju doesn't actually eat or drink for that matter, it enjoys a good battle every now and then. It was in a cave, dug into the sand, where Naruto found Shikaku. The one-tail was flicking its tail from side to side, a sign of agitation when Naruto appeared. The instant the last Otsutsuki appeared, the Biju snapped its head towards the entrance of the cave where Naruto was standing, its body tensed in case Naruto attacked. It relaxed though when its visitor sat down on the ground at the entrance of the cave. Both man and tailed beast stared at each other for a moment before Naruto broke the silence with a question for the giant sand tanuki. So Shikaku, how have you been these last few centuries? Naruto asked in a light tone as to not startle the one-tail. The Biju looked at Naruto for a minute before sighing, though the sigh came out as more of a light, yet loud, grunt due to Shikaku's size. I have been well, Aji-san. What about you? Shikaku's voice wasn't a deep, guttural tone like most would expect. It was actually similar to that of a young teenage boy, but due to the Biju's size, there was a deep tone added to it. It was strange though, despite the fact that none of the tailed beasts having had any sort of set gender, many of them sounded and acted either male or female. Some of the Biju even changed genders over the millennia since they had been born. I have been good to Shikaku, Naruto said before the name he was called caught up with him, and he developed a small tick mark on his forehead. Why do you Biju seem to find calling me uncle so important that you never actually call me by my name unless it's serious? This was quite annoying for Naruto. For some reason the Biju, or at least those he was on speaking terms with, found it necessary to address him as uncle every time they met. Shikaku gave Naruto a grin, showing off several pointy teeth that were housed in its mouth before replying. Because you are and it's funny, the one-tail said with snigger at his Aji-san, who was currently mumbling under his breath about ungrateful brats. Naruto grumbled for several more moments about being called uncle, before he turned back to Shikaku, who was still sniggering. Naruto reined in his own irritation and addressed the giant tanuki. Have you met up with any of the others recently? Naruto inquired, hoping to find out how his nieces and nephews were doing. That might have been the wrong thing to ask as the tanuki immediately stopped sniggering and became a little sad, resting on its stomach with its hands under its head like a pillow, which was an unusual position for a creature that had the power to decimate hundreds with ease. No, Shikaku muttered. Its voice was soft but the cave made it echo. The last of them that I came into contact with was Koko around 100 years ago. Since then I haven't come into contact with anyone. The Ichibi replied sadly, and Naruto couldn't help but give the tailed beast a sad smile as well. It must have been tough for Shikaku, having to be alone for so long. Naruto got up and walked towards the biju that was still lying down. Shikaka tensed slightly as Naruto approached. The white-haired man raised his hand and placed it to Biju's nose, rubbing the area slightly. Shikaka relaxed at the touch. Naruto's familiar chakra helped calm the biju and it relaxed into the touch. I am sorry, Shikaka, for not visiting you, for not checking on you. I am sorry, Shikaka. Naruto apologized to the biju while continuing to rub the nose of the one-tail. From now on I'll visit you weekly if you want. I see how you're doing and we can talk, spar, whatever it is you want, Shikaku. Naruto continued to apologize to Shikaku, who was basking in Naruto's touch. It felt so nice to have someone who cared about you, that wanted you, someone that was family. So Shikaku, Naruto said, breaking the one-tail out of its thoughts. What do you want to do today? The tanuki thought it over for several minutes before deciding. Talk, the Ichibi requested. Naruto simply gave a nod and moved back before sitting down on the sand. What were you doing when we met earlier? The biju asked its Aji-san. I was training my students. Naruto explained. Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Senju and Uchiha. The biju said with confusion in its voice. Last I heard those two clans hated each other. Why would they allow their children near someone of the other clan? And how did you get the family heads to agree to let you train them? Why would you train them anyway? Shikaka asked. It was confusing. All of the biju knew that their stepbrothers had fought after their father's death and that their descending clans hated each other, so how would Naruto get the two clans to not only let them train together, but to let him train them? All I'm training are the two kids and neither of their clans knows that they're getting training from me. The two kids I'm training don't know the other's last name either. Naruto explained to Shikaku. The tanuki nodded in understanding. Either clan knew that someone from their clan was getting training with the other. That made a whole lot more sense as to why their families would let them train with someone from the opposing clan. You still didn't say why you were training them? Shikaka pointed out. Naruto gave the one-tail a sad smile before answering. Hagoromo, on his deathbed, asked me to look out for his sons and their descendants, to help them find the right path. Up until recently, I'd never gotten a good enough chance to be able to help anyone from either clan. Naruto explained. Shikaku didn't speak for several minutes, just soaking in what his father had asked Naruto to do. It seemed like an almost impossible task if someone looked at the history of the two clans. They had been fighting, for one reason or another, since they had first been created. Anyone else would have given up. Hell, Naruto should have given up. But something was making him continue, making him not losing hope in the two clans. He gave Tusan his word. The biju realized. That must be why Naruto still continued to help the Senju and Uchiha, even when most would have given up, branding both clans as hopeless cases. Naruto valued someone's word, their honor above everything, even strength. This had only increased when Naruto was betrayed by his brother, who had put his goals over his family and essentially stabbed Naruto in the back. He is too noble for his own good, the Ichibi thought. So Shikaku, got any new moves that you made over the years? Naruto said, interrupting the biju's thoughts. The biju nodded and went into detail about how it found new ways to utilize its sand in battle. The conversation went on for hours, until the sun finally set and Naruto bid Shikaku goodbye, promising that they would meet again in a week's time. As Naruto traveled back to Fire Country, he could only ponder how long his streak of apparent good luck would last. He'd started to fulfill his promise to Hagoromo and made up with Shikaku. Naruto could only wonder how long his luck would last, before it all came crashing down. Chapter 7. Hashirama leapt through the trees of the forest at an alarming pace, his feet only touching each branch for a second before the Senju was already leaping to the next. The speed at which Hashirama was traveling at would make most people double-take, his body a blur to only the most skilled of shinobi. But the Senju heir didn't care about that, he was more concerned about what was about to happen. How could Tobirama have followed me without me knowing? I know I'm bad at sensing people, but he would have made soft noises or other sounds that would have alerted me or Madara to his presence. The Senju thought furiously. He continued on this line of thought, his body automatically jumping from tree to tree, before he tried to look at the brighter side of the situation. Well, at least they don't know about Sensei. Thank Kami that yesterday was our day to train on our own. Nearly missing a branch made the Senju inwardly curse himself for nearly missing the branch. He then focused on jumping towards the river. Maybe Sensei would have an idea? If not, he didn't want to think about what would happen. The 2 years of training that both Madara and himself had under Naruto had created a bond between the three, though with Hashirama connected more with Madara than his sensei. The days of training by themselves had made the two clan heirs gain a bond similar to one between two brothers. Their sensei had become a kind of uncle to the two, the one they went to problems with when they couldn't get the answers from their family or fellow clan members. Hashirama's thoughts came to a stop when he saw that he was nearing the river, the sound of water running giving away the location. He quickly leapt to the shore of the river that was in Senju territory, noticing that Madara was in the Uchiha side. Sensei isn't here, Hashirama noticed. Their teacher would usually stand in the center of the river, on top of the water, waiting for the two of them to arrive, or he would hide and watch to see what they would do when he wasn't there to guide them. Not the best time to be absent, Sensei, Hashirama thought with mild irritation. Out of all the times to see what they would do, now was not the best of times. From now on, Madara said, grabbing Hashirama's attention. Well, skip rocks as a formal way of greeting one another. That was strange. Why would Madara want to skip rocks to each other? They had been meeting like this for over 2 years. Why would Madara want to change that? Hashirama put those thoughts out of his head. He needed to get Madara the message he had on the rock they had skipped yesterday. Okay, Hashirama replied as he reached into his clothes to pull out the stone with message on it, while the Uchiha heir got out his own rock. On the count of 3 both skipped the stones at the same time across the river, both catching the rock that was skipped with one hand. Looking down at the rock in his hand, Hashirama froze as he read, and, it's not red, it's red. Same spelling, different meaning, the small message on the rock. Run. My bad, Hashirama. I just remembered I gotta run an errand today, Madara called, forcing Hashirama to look up to the Uchiha already walking away. Hashirama put on a fake smile to make his brother and father, behind some trees, seem like nothing was wrong. I see, Hashirama called back to his friend, sticking an arm up in wave. Well then I won't keep you, catch up with you later, he said before glancing down at the rock in his hand one last time before turning and bolting back into the forest. He was about to enter the tree line when he heard a splash from the river. Turning back, he was confronted by the worst possible situation. His father, Butsuma Senju, and his brother, Tobirama, was facing off against what appeared to be Madara's father, Taijima Uchiha, and brother, Izuna. Shit. Hashirama cursed. This was not how he wanted today to turn out. Kami, damn it, where is Sensei when you need him? The Senju cursed his sensei wherever he was. If his brother ended up dead, Hashirama didn't know how he would survive. The Senju was sure that Madara was in the same boat as him right now. It appeared that the Madara and his father must have had the conversation yesterday as Hashirama and his father. Isn't that good luck? Hashirama thought sarcastically. The swish of a sharp object cutting through the air brought him out of his thoughts in time to see a small knife or dagger flying through the air towards his brother. Hashirama idly noted that there was another heading towards Izuna, Madara's brother. Seeing that the knife was going to kill his brother, Hashirama did the only thing he could to save him. He threw the rock in his hand with pinpoint accuracy, hitting the descending knife with a clang while Madara did the same to save his own brother. The two clan heirs leapt in front of their respective brothers, while their fathers stood behind them. Even if it's you, Harmon hair on my Otuto, and you'll face my wrath, Madara snarled towards Hashirama. The two stared at each other before Madara sighed. All of our talk of building our own village. Looks like it was nothing more than wishful thinking, Madara said sadly. Hashirama looked at his friend in shock. Did he really feel that way over their dream? Something they had talked about over years. Something that they hadn't even fully told their sensei. Did Madara really want to just give it up? Madara, the Senju heir said. Do you really feel? For what it's worth, Madara admitted. It may have been fleeting, but I really did have a blast, Hashirama. Madara tried to offer a small smile to his now ex-friend, but he just couldn't do it, so he resigned himself to give the Senju heir a sad smile. A part of me is shocked at your choice, Madara. A voice sounded out in the forest, one that was alien to 4, yet familiar to 2. Those two then turned to look for the source, which came from upstream. There, standing on top of the surface of the river, was a man with long hair, a frayed blindfold around his eyes that allowed those who looked hard enough to see the white eyes that lay beneath, and a brown cloak, with the hood down, that covered his clothing. But another part of me understands that you would choose your brother over anything. The man finished with a small smile. Who are you? Butsume demanded while Taijima, Tobirama, Izuna and himself all slid into aggressive stances. Butsume's question was answered when Hashirama and Madara both put their right hand into a closed fist and their left into a vertical open palm, then bringing them together before bowing towards the man. Naruto-sensei. They both greeted the man before the two clan heads. Both family heads reeled for a moment. Their children just called the white-haired man before them sensei. Why would their children let this man train them, and just who was he that thought he could train their children? The man, Naruto, gave their children a small smile before he continued to talk. You both know what happens now, don't you? Both Hashirama and Madara shook their heads, forgetting what their teacher was talking about. Naruto, instead of getting slightly angry at his pupils' forgetfulness, simply gave them both a sad smile. Our training has been discovered. As such, I will no longer be able to teach you both. Both Madara and Hashirama's eyes widened before both of them bowed their heads in sorrow. They were losing their sensei, someone who had trained them, made them what they were today. Don't look so sad, I'm sure that we'll meet again someday, Naruto said with a small smile. This was a lie. Naruto, over the years, had foreseen this outcome coming, Madara choosing his brother over Hashirama and their dream. While there was a chance that Hashirama would choose the dream, he would make sure that Tobirama was safe before pursuing it. Madara, on the other hand, didn't want to take that chance and risk his brother. With this, both Hashirama and Madara would most likely fight each other like their ancestors did in the past. It was sad but true. Perhaps they could come together again, but it would take an enormous amount of stubbornness on Hashirama's part, or a massive change from Madara. Right now, though, it appeared that all his work was for nothing. Before I go, I have gifts for both of you, the white-haired man announced. Both Uchiha and Senju focused on the man as he reached into his cloak before pulling out a large gunbai. The gunbai was in the shape of a wide fan with tomo on the face and has a long handle with bandages wrapped around the base, as well as having a long chain attached to it. Naruto then tossed the fan towards the Uchiha heir while pulling out his next gift, a necklace made of a thin string that was threaded through a thin green crystal with two small baubles on either side of the crystal. Naruto then, with a simple motion, threw the necklace towards Hashirama, who caught it before holding it up to his face to examine the gift while Madara was doing the same to his large fan, all the while the other 4 people were watching the gifts and Naruto wearily. Madara, Hashirama, Naruto called, drawing attention from the people before him. As you can guess, I have given you both a gunbai and necklace respectively. Both have special abilities. The gunbai has the ability to redirect and block different attacks, while the necklace has the ability to enhance Mokuton techniques. Naruto said to his students before he looked up at the sun, which was high in the sky, signaling that it was about noon. He missed the looks of all that the children gave the gifts and the calculative glint in the clan heads. It is about time for me to leave. He turned to look at Hashirama and Madara, giving them one last smile. Goodbye, Hashirama, Madara. I'm sorry that this isn't a proper farewell, but I must be off. Keep training and live your lives how you want to. With that, Naruto reached to his hood, lifting it up to cover his face, before he turned around and began to walk to the east, in the direction of the Senju territory. The land of water was usually rather cool this time of year. He only got several steps, however, before the Uchiha and Senju clan heads leapt in front of him, though judging by how they were keeping their bodies open, to have the ability to attack one another, they weren't doing this together, more like they had the same idea. After a moment of tense silence, Taijima Uchiha addressed the white-haired man. Who are you that you think you have the right or the ability to teach the Uchiha heir? The man demanded while keeping a wary eye on the senju to his right. Butsuma gave a small grunt in agreement, though he was asking why Naruto would train his own child. Turning towards the clan leaders, Naruto's friendly demeanor vanished. His posture became tensed, and he pressed his aura over the two of Hagoromo's descendants in front of him. You are not in a position to ask me anything, Uchiha. Naruto sneered at the Sharingan user. I hold no respect for you or your clan. I only hold any respect for your son, and he is the only reason that I don't kill most of the Uchiha I see. Taijima's eyes narrowed, but he was forced to take a step back from the pressure the Naruto was excluding. Butsuma gave a small snort in amusement, seeing the Uchiha, but in his place, unfortunately for him, it got the attention of Naruto, who rounded on the man immediately. You think you're any better, Senju? The same goes for you and your clan, your son being the reason that I have not killed any of your members either. Naruto then split his attention between the two of them. I have watched multiple times as your clan members attack and butcher each other like it was nothing. I have seen each clan kill children of the other, simply because of who they were born to. The only reason the two of you are still breathing is because of my generosity. Do not think you can get me to give you any more. The Uzumaki and Hyuga ancestor stated with barely restrained contempt. He had stayed his hand because he didn't want Hashirama and Madara to lose any more people close to them, but because he didn't know how close they were to any of them, he didn't want to take the risk and kill anyone. This included letting many atrocities go that he would normally kill the offenders for. This caused a lot of repressed anger in Naruto that was now spilling over. Taijima and Butsuma gave a snarl towards the man that so easily admitted to killing members of their clan in the past. Both drew their own swords before Taijima spoke, his voice barely concealing the contempt he felt for the man in front of him. While Butsuma and I find it hard to agree on anything, you find we both hate those that murder those of our clan. But I believe I can safely say that we are both going to kill you. Both Taijima and Butsuma then leapt at the man, swords out, points towards the man. Neither man heard the eldest son's warning, telling to not attack the man before them. If they had, they might have heard the urgency and slight fear that both their voices held and wondered what could have got their sons so scared. But they didn't. The man before them was fast. He moved so quickly that neither clan heir noticed that his arms in motion until their blades hit his forearms with a clang, like metal hitting metal, which surprised all those watching, though Butsuma and Taijima quickly put that thought out of their minds. Both men put more strength into their blades, but it didn't do anything. The man's arms didn't even show any sign that there was something pressing on them except for the blades that were pressing on his arms. It was then, once they'd stopped moving, that they heard their son's yells. Don't attack him, Tio-san! Madara yelled at his father. He'll destroy you. Tio-san, you're not powerful enough to attack Naruto-sensei. He'll annihilate you! Hashirama screamed. Both Madara and Hashirama had seen the power of their sensei when he defeated the One-Tails, and again over time when he took everything they could throw at him. They both knew, without a doubt, that their fathers were nowhere near strong enough to defeat their, now former, sensei. This was proven when Naruto, capitalizing on the distraction Hashirama and Madara had, unintentionally, provided. Pushing his arms forward, Naruto made space between himself and the Uchiha and Senju. Both jumped back with their swords out to defend from an attack by Naruto, but what happened next shocked those who watched. One moment, Naruto was in front of Butsuma and Taijima. The next, he was behind them. It was a display of speed that shocked even Hashirama and Madara. Their former sensei had never displayed that level of speed when he sparred with them, not even when they went all out. Twin cries of pain made the attention turn to the two clan heads, who were now face down on the ground with a small circle of blood pooling beneath them. The two children of each clan head each ran to their respective father, checking how injured they were, though the only wound they could find, besides the fact that both men were unconscious, was a clean, precise cut that ran across the chest of both males. A steady stream of blood leaked out of the cut, soaking the clothes the two were wearing. If you get them medical help, they will not die. However, they will not be able to fight like they once did ever again. The voice of Naruto made his presence known. Both Tobirama and Izuna stood up to face their father's attack, but a hand from their elder brothers made them stop. I am not sorry that I attacked your fathers, Hashirama, Madara. But I am sorry that our last meeting will end like this. There was true regret in Naruto's voice. Madara and Hashirama could sense that much, as well as the fact that he truly didn't care about the wounds that he inflicted on their fathers. Much of the time I have released my anger on those that cause harm without provocation, but not on your own clan due to you both being my pupils at the time. So instead, I was forced to watch as many of your clan members perform atrocities on the other simply because of the circumstances of birth. Hearing your Two-san speak as if he was above the rest, Madara, when I had seen the horrors that he himself performed, made my blood boil, but hearing your clan head agree with him, Hashirama, brought me over the edge. Naruto took a deep breath, sighing before he turned to walk away. There was no reason to say goodbye again. Naruto-sensei. Madara called, causing Naruto to stop and turn around slightly. I am not your sensei, Madara. Naruto said back to the Uchiha clan heir. What weapon did you use? Madara asked, ignoring what Naruto said. You have never used a weapon during the entire time you trained us. Naruto gave a small smirk, not that Madara could see it with his hood up, before answering. I'll give both you and Hashirama one last lesson, Madara. He said before he walked up to a nearby tree, 4 pairs of eyes trailing him. Naruto stopped just before a tree that was easily the width of a full-grown man. He extended his arm out slightly, showing a strange vambrace on his forearm that looked like it extended to his elbow. The vambrace was quite thick, made of leather and metal, and looked like it weighed a far bit, strange for something that is meant to be light. Always have your secrets, Madara. With no extra movement or motion, a large blade shot out several centimeters over Naruto's fist from one of the vambraces. Before, in a blur of motion, the Naruto swung the blade at the tree. There was no sound, not of a blade hitting bark, not the crack of a tree breaking. Naruto's blade seemed to phase right through the wood, as if it wasn't even there. Naruto then turned around to look at his audience, who all had a confused look on their face over what that was meant to do. The former sensei of 2 gave a small smirk and placed a hand on the tree, that began to tilt to one side before it fell over with a thunderous boom that shook the forest and its inhabitants. Once the 4 conscious people finally got over their shock and looked back to where Naruto was, they found the man gone, having left in the distraction that the falling tree caused. All the proof they found that he was there were 2 injured clan heads and a clean-cut tree stump. Naruto sighed as he walked down a poorly beaten path towards the east. His mind kept drifting back towards his most likely final encounter with Madara and Hashirama. He was still on the fence as to if he should give them gifts or not. He obviously decided to, as he did give them gifts, but now, looking back on it, he wasn't sure. The gunbai and the crystal necklace were quite powerful objects, and he wondered if they would be used for the right reasons. He shook his head. It was up to Madara and Hashirama now to decide what they would be used for. Naruto could only hope. The gifts that he had gotten both of his former students had been based on what he believed suited them the best. Hashirama had his Mokuton, therefore he got the crystal that helped empower it, while Madara got the gunbai, a weapon that can be used primarily for defense or offense, to help Madara in his spars with Hashirama. As they were both equals, the fight would switch from offense to defense, so he gave Madara a weapon that would suit him in both situations. Naruto always had planned to give them those gifts when they found out about each other's heritage. It was one of the reasons that there were 3 tomo on the face of the gunbai. But he had hoped that neither would find out about the other for a couple more years, or at least that he could tell them about each other in a controlled environment. It was just bad luck that both were trailed on the one day that he was with Shikaku. Speaking of Shikaku, Naruto and the One-Tail had working relationship now, where Naruto could safely call the Ichibi a friend. It also helped that he could talk to someone about the things that he couldn't talk to regular people about, like what he thought about how ninjutsu, and how it was a mockery of everything his father ever sacrificed in his life. Unfortunately, he hadn't made any real headway in connecting with the rest of the Biju. Becoming friends with Shikaku had really showed Naruto that he should have looked out for the Biju more over the years. Shikaku was proof of this. But his training of Hashirama and Madara, his weekly meetings with Shikaku, and the need to not expose himself, meant that he could only search so hard for the rest of the Biju. He had encountered Matatabi once, but the two tails had simply run at the sight of him. He didn't know why, but he was going to find out soon. Hopefully, now that he was free of his promise to train Hashirama and Madara, he could go out and look for the rest of the Biju more thoroughly. Though he would still have his weekly meetings with Shikaku, he would have to search carefully though. If Matatabi's reaction was any indication, they would run if they found out that he was searching for them. But right now, Naruto just wanted a break. The final meeting with the Senju and Uchiha clan heads had been stressful, and right now, Naruto just wanted to relax for a month or two. Unfortunately for Naruto, that notion was immediately dropped when he heard a female scream ring through the air, coming from further east. "Every freaking time," Naruto muttered. "Every time I want to relax, what am I the only one that can do things?" He grumbled before he took off in the direction of the scream, jumping from tree to tree as to not be spotted when he approached. Hopefully this wouldn't take long, then he could go back to walking towards water country. He really did like the weather there at this time of year. After a minute of traveling, he came upon the source of the scream. A young girl, around the age of Hashirama and Madara, was tied to a tree with a gag in her mouth, with several Hagoromo clan members around her setting up some sort of a camp. The clan members were identifiable because they had their clan symbol placed on the shoulders of their attire. 3 of the members were setting up tents, 2 gathering firewood, while the final 2 were standing in front of their obvious prisoner, taunting her. Naruto remained hidden in the treetops, using centuries of practice to evade the senses of the 7 shinobi. Looking down on the scene, Naruto knew that he would have to save the girl. He was always going to save the girl, but a single glance at her made his self-objective of rescuing her that much more important. She had red hair. The Hagoromo clan wouldn't bother with kidnapping a civilian with red hair. There was no point unless they were the relative of someone with a high standing. But even then they wouldn't have come this far into Senju territory unless it was important, and even a civilian of high standing wasn't important enough to travel into enemy territory. A clan heir was, and there was only one clan that had red hair within the region. The Uzumaki clan. It took all his mental strength not to jump down and slaughter the men below, but Naruto managed to restrain himself and began to analyze the situation. 7 targets, all distracted but keeping their senses open, 3 with their backs towards him, the ones taunting the Uzumaki and one of the 2 gathering firewood. All were armed and would most likely use their prisoner as a hostage if they got the chance. The solution is to take out the ones closest to the Uzumaki first, and guard her while dispatching the rest of the men. Easy. Naruto carefully maneuvered around the tree branches until he was resting on the same tree that the girl was tied to. Naruto didn't wait when he was in position. As soon as he felt he was ready, Naruto leapt down. The fluttering of his cloak alerted the 7 Hagoromo clan members to his presence, but they didn't react fast enough to his surprise attack. Landing in front of the kidnapped girl, Naruto instinctively sends a small pulse of chakra to his top half of both of his forearms, causing large blades to extend over his fists. The blades were then buried in the chests of 2 Hagoromo clan members before they violently ripped out, spraying blood all over the ground. The now dead bodies fell to the ground with a thump. Naruto didn't wait for the rest of the clan members to regain their bearings. Leaping into action, Naruto quickly decapitated another clan member to his left before deflect several thrown kunai with his blades. Apparently the 4 surviving members of the Hagoromo clan had gained their bearings faster than he thought. Pity it wouldn't do them any good. "Prepare to die, fool!" One of the clan members spat, forgetting that he just killed 3 of the members in seconds. "You messed with the wrong clan." Seeing a chance to gain information, Naruto spoke. "Why did you kidnap this girl?" Naruto spoke in a monotone voice while gesturing to the girl behind him. "Like we'd tell you that?" The same person sneered. Naruto sighed. "I'll just have to find out when I'm interrogating you later." In a blink Naruto disappeared before he reappeared in the same spot. The man just gave a nasty smile to Naruto. "What was that meant to D-dash?" The man was cut off by several thumps. Spinning around, the man found the 3 other Hagoromo clan members dead, their heads cut clean of their bodies with a pool of blood collecting beneath them. Turning around again to face Naruto, the man found Naruto standing right before him. Quicker than he could blink, The man then found himself hoisted off the ground and a hand around his neck that was slowly squeezing, constricting his windpipe. The man quickly found himself suffocating. I will ask you this once and only once, why did you kidnap the girl? Answer this and perhaps I won't kill you, Naruto said to the man in the same monotone voice. The once cocky clan member, seeing a way out, spilt his guts to Naruto. It was for leverage. He managed under the slow suffocation. It was to get the Uzumaki clan to abandon their alliance with the Senju. That's all I know, that's all I know. The man croaked. Thank you, Naruto said in the same tone of voice before. With a swing of his arm, chopped the man's head off. Letting the body fall to the ground, Naruto turned to face the girl that was still tied to the tree. As he got closer, Naruto saw the fear present in her eyes and had to hold in a sigh. The girl obviously wasn't like Hashirama and Madara, who already knew what death looked like. From the amount of fear that she was showing, what she just saw were probably her first taste of death. One part of Naruto was happy that she had managed to maintain her innocence this long, while another was sad that he was the one to show her the ugly side of the world. Though he wasn't very surprised that she hadn't seen death yet, the Uzumaki clan never really were a clan of violence. While they could fight incredibly well, his descendants preferred to keep their hands as clean as possible. Their focus on seals meant that they weren't primarily frontline fighters like the Uchiha or Senju. The Uzumaki were more support-orientated, though their skill in kenjutsu meant that they could fight on the front lines if the need arises. The Uzumaki were his only relatives, no matter how distant, that he was proud of. The Hyuga enslaved their own family while the Senju and Uchiha fought constantly. The Uzumaki had built their reputation on their knowledge and practice of the sealing arts, known across the elemental nations as seal masters, meant to be able to seal anything. Because of this, not many trifled with them for fear of retaliation from both them and the Senju clan, to which the Uzumaki clan have had close ties to for a century or two. The Uzumaki clan relied on the Senju due to the fact that they were an island clan. Because of this, in the event of an invasion, the Uzumaki had nowhere to run, and so relied on the Senju as either a first line of defense, an added deterrent, or a place to hide in case some does succeed in destroying their home. This was part of what troubled Naruto. The Senju clan should have detected the Hagoromo clan approaching their island, or the Senju should have intercepted the kidnappers before they got near the island, as they would have had to travel through Senju territory to reach the Uzumaki's island home to be able to kidnap this girl, assuming she was on the island. But even so, they should have gotten detected by the Senju clan before they gotten anywhere near the Uzumaki's island home. Focusing back on the girl, Naruto could see that she looked like she was going to cry and was trying to make herself as small as possible. Naruto simply walked up to where the girl was tied and squatted down so that they were roughly eye level before he removed the hood from his cloak, showing his long white hair and frayed blindfold. "Hey, it's okay, Naruto said in a soothing voice to the girl, using the calm tone to make the child relax. It took some time, but eventually the girl managed to calm down enough to not gaze at Naruto in complete fear. It was then that Naruto started talking again. "I'm sorry that you had to see what I just did, but I needed to get rid of them so that you could be safe, okay?" The girl nodded, showing that she understood. "Alright, I'm going to untie you, but you can't run away in case more of them are around." The girl nodded again, and Naruto traveled round to the back of the tree she was tied to and undid the rope before walking back to stand in front of her and squatting down to her eye level again. "What's your name, child?" Naruto questioned. "Mito Uzumaki." The girl, Mito, replied. So he was right, she was an Uzumaki. "Okay, Mito, do you know how you were kidnapped?" She gave a slight nod of the head. "Can you tell me how?" "I was taking a trip to the mainland with guards," she said hesitantly. Apparently she was still nervous about his presence. "When we were attacked, my guards told me to run and I did, but they still caught me. They tied me up and told me how they killed all of my guards and started to insult them." There was heat when she spoke her last few words. Apparently she wasn't as timid as he thought she was. "They told me that I was a prisoner, and that I would be used to get to Tucson." So, she was used to get to her father, which implies that her father is someone of high standing. Then you came along and... She trailed off. "Killed them." Naruto finished. Naruto felt no guilt over his actions. Living for a millennia made you realize that people died every day. So why should he feel remorse over killing people who threatened his family, or relatives in this case? Yeah, Mito said back, looking a little pale. Naruto could see that she was replaying her memory of him killing the kidnappers. She would most likely have nightmares for a while. Naruto let her stew in her thoughts for a little bit before he straightened up and tapped her on the head. "Come on," he said before turning around and started walking towards the east. The girl was startled for a minute before she called out to Naruto. "Why should I go with you?" Mito asked with apprehension and a bit of fear in her voice. Naruto stopped before turning around and addressing Mito with a raised eyebrow that came over the blindfold. "You want to go home, don't you?" Mito nodded. "Well, come with me. I'm passing by the land of whirlpools, so I may as well drop you there." Before he turned around and continued walking, Mito looked around for a moment before running to catch up with Naruto. The two of them proceeded to travel through the large forest towards the Uzumaki compound in silence, at least until Mito broke it. "What's your name?" she questioned hesitantly, wringing her hands on her dirty kimono. "Naruto," said man replied. There was silence for a moment before Mito broke it again. "Where are you going?" she questioned again. "The land of whirlpools, that's where I'm taking you, isn't it?" Naruto said to the red-headed girl. The girl huffed. "I mean before you met me," she clarified. "I was going to the land of water." Naruto answered. There was no harm in telling the girl where he was going, though when they arrived at the Uzumaki's home island those plans would most likely change. "Was?" she asked, asking what he meant by using the word "was" instead of "am." "I was going to the land of water," the white-eyed man repeated before adding. "But I will most likely visit the land of whirlpools instead. I have plenty of time to do both," he said with a bit of false happiness. Over the years, Naruto has had plenty of time to come to terms with the fact that he will stay young while those around him would grow old and wither. It still, to this day, wasn't an easy concept to accept, but he had gone on with his life, though he had refrained from having any children over the years, not wanting to see any more of his children die before him, nor was he willing to cheat on his wife, though he knew that she would want him to be happy. "Well, I'd like you to meet Tsu-san." That knocked Naruto out of his thoughts. Why would Mito want him to meet her father? Stopping, Naruto turned to look directly at Mito with a questioning gaze, not that she could see it because of the blindfold. Perhaps he should take off the blindfold. All it did was in the way of his vision, and he would just deny any accusations that he was related to the Hyuga. Naruto quickly returned from his thoughts and asked Mito a question. "Why do you want me to meet your Tsu-san?" he said as he brought his hands up to get rid of his blindfold. "Well, not just Tsu-san," she said, observing him as he removed his blindfold, revealing his pure white eyes. The girl gave a startled gasp before staring at his eyes, though she quickly began turning red when Naruto cleared his throat with a raised eyebrow. She stuttered a bit at being found staring before Naruto gave a chuckle to help her relax. It was good that he tried to get her mind off the death that she had seen minutes before. Naruto knew that the fact that she had seen people die and been near dead people hadn't yet sunk in, and wouldn't until she truly thought over it, which would most likely happen before she went to sleep. Naruto inwardly cursed when he realized that they were still at least 2 days away from the land of whirlpools, but decided that he would just use a summon to transport them before he turned back to let Mito finish. After regaining her confidence, she continued. "Anyway, it wouldn't just be Tsu-san, there would be Ka-san and Wani-san as well," she admitted before she tried to change the subject with an accusation. "Why didn't you tell me you're blind?" she childishly demanded. Naruto simply gave another chuckle at the girl before he held up his hand for any more comments that would most likely follow from his chuckling. "I've decided that I'll use a summon to get us to your home quickly," he said. "Unless you'd rather walk," Naruto added while inwardly praying that she didn't. He had no wish to comfort a crying girl after the day that he had. Mito was silent for a moment before she answered. "Summon, please." Naruto inwardly gave a sigh of relief. "One summon coming up," Naruto raised his right arm and pushed back the sleeve of the kimono he was wearing to reveal multiple kanji that spiraled around his bicep. Each one was quite large, about the size of his thumb, and each represented the symbol for an animal. Though Mito wasn't close enough to see them all, she did manage to identify a few: bear, eagle, wasp, panther, kraken and toad to name a few. Naruto bit a finger before he pressed it to the eagle symbol and released a burst of chakra which resulted in a large puff of smoke appearing in front of Naruto, though thankfully not squashing Mito. When the smoke cleared, in place was a large eagle, easily several meters tall and a few in length. The eagle let out a screech before it spread out its wings and gave them an experimental flap. Mito stared open-mouthed at the wingspan of the bird of prey. It was easily 25 meters across. The eagle folded its wings before it searched the area with its sharp gaze, which came to rest on Naruto and subsequently Mito, who was hiding behind the body of Naruto, a bit intimidated by the size and sharpness of the gaze that the mighty bird possessed. Naruto gave a chuckle at the bird before he greeted it. "Hello, Basama," Naruto greeted. "How have you been?" The bird stared at Naruto before its gaze lightened. "I have been good, Naruto-sama," the eagle, Basama, said. Naruto gave a small sigh at the suffix the giant bird placed after his name. "I will forever curse your father for getting you to call me that," Naruto said in exasperation. Why did Mintasa have to be so serious about honor? Why couldn't he have been more laid back? The giant eagle merely gave a small snort towards Naruto. "It is a sign of respect, Naruto-sama, a sign of respect that all summon animals should give you and your brother for the rest of our existence," the eagle said as if it was chastising a small child. "Hey, don't speak down to me as if I'm a child because you know damn well I'm not," Naruto said, a bit irritated at how Basama was speaking to him. "Besides, we have company," Naruto announced while stepping to the side to allow Basama to have a good look at Mito, who gave a small squeak at being caught in the intimidating eagle's vision. "This is Mito Uzumaki, so be nice," Naruto introduced while sending Basama an underlying message which the eagle caught. "She's family, so we protect her and be nice to her." Basama inwardly nodded at the message while trying to keep his own feeling to himself. Eagles, as summons, were not the most social of the large animals, only ever truly trusting family, which to the eagles was only other eagles and Naruto. People that were related to Naruto didn't count. As such, the eagles didn't work the best with new people. This didn't look like it was going to change as the super-sized birds of prey also refused to have a summoner besides Naruto. The eagles also had too much pride to be at the beck and call of a lowly human, not classifying Naruto as one due to his large power. They had seen how the humans had used their brethren as weapons for conquest, for war, and it sickened them that the rest of the summons would allow themselves to manipulate it to such an extent, to become akin to puppets, dancing to the will of humans. It was because of this that the eagle summons had cut themselves off from the rest of the summons, only maintaining correspondence with a few of the other summon animals. "It is nice to meet you, child," the giant eagle grumbled towards the girl. Just because he couldn't be mean to the girl didn't automatically mean that he would treat the girl like she was a princess. He bet that the girl would turn out just like the rest of the human race in the future. "Hi!" Mito squeaked, not really knowing what she could say to the eagle that had the power to crush her if it wished. "Okay, Mito, it's time to fly," Naruto announced before, in a swift motion, picked Mito up and leapt onto the back of Basama, placing Mito in front of him. "Okay, Basama, let's fly." "You got it!" the eagle exclaimed before. With a flap of its wings, the eagle leapt into the air and began to soar into the skies. "Wait!" Mito screamed, but no one heard her as voice was carried into the wind as the giant eagle soared through the air at unmatched speeds, towards the land of whirlpools. Kai Uzumaki was an elder man, one that still retained innumerable amounts of power despite his highly advanced age. The man was past his prime yet still retained much of his youth despite his 96 years of age. Thanks to the Uzumaki longevity, it was as if he was still 42, but knew that it would soon be time to hand over the clan to his eldest daughter, Kushuma. He didn't believe that she would have any trouble with running the clan. She had been trained since she was a child about the duties that she would be tasked with when she was older, and the now 20-year-old was ready for what was to come, but despite that, he was still worried about her. Kai was standing in front of the massive gates of Kazama, named after the founder of the Uzumaki clan, Kazama Uzumaki. The man had long, white hair, mustache, and a squared-off goatee and was wearing armor that covered his front and back along with twin swords strapped to his back. Kai stared down the road that led to the docks that connected the island to the mainland that was flanked by trees on either side. The Uzumaki clan head was lost in his thoughts, worried about his daughter, not his eldest but his youngest Mito. He could not help but think that he shouldn't have let her visit the mainland, but his daughter's pleas had made him fold. Despite his gut telling him that letting her go was a mistake, that was no reason to worry. But as soon as he saw his daughter's ship disappear over the horizon, he knew that he had made a mistake. But he couldn't just do things on gut instinct. That would make him impulsive. She hadn't been gone for a day, and she would most likely be gone for 3 or 4. But he couldn't stop worrying about little Mito. She was his daughter. She was still what one would call an innocent, someone who hadn't seen the horrors of the outside world, only hearing about it in stories. But there was plenty of difference between hearing about death and watching as the life is drained from someone's eyes. He hoped that Mito would always have that sort of innocence in her eyes, but knew that it was only a matter of time before she lost it. Kai released a sigh. Perhaps nothing was wrong, maybe it just his old age setting in and his daughter was having a lovely time on the mainland before she came back, and he had to tell her the bad news. The Uzumaki clan head turned around and prepared the journey back to his office. Turning back to the gates of Kazama, Kai took his time to observe them before he asked the guards at the gate to open them up. He was always amazed by the gates. The gates themselves were roughly 10 or so meters with a width that was double that, connected to guard towers that controlled the gates, which in turn was joined to an incredible large stone wall, about the same height of the gate, that spanned the Uzumaki clan territory on the island. The guard towers and gate were taller than the trees that surrounded the Uzumaki clan compound, allowing the guards to be able to watch the skies. Contrary to popular belief, the Uzumaki did not actually occupy the island completely. There were plenty of civilians that farmed the land, paying a tax to the Uzumaki to guard them. The civilians all lived on coastal towns that littered the western side of the island, though there were a few that were located on the central and eastern sides of the island. They paid the Uzumaki to guard them from rival clans that would seek abuse and enslave them rather than let them live their lives like the Uzumaki do, and pirates that constantly lurk in the waters of the sea, willing to raid docks and boats to gain what they want. The Uzumaki usually to guard jobs on boats or around coastal towns, but they're the occasional clients from the east or west that request the expertise of a few ninjutsu master or seal master. It was because of the constant need for jobs within their own country that the Uzumaki had little to no enemies, as they didn't run into or interact with any other clans, with the exception of a few. The gates were said to have been made during the earliest years of the Uzumaki clan's existence, when Kazama Uzumaki first settled on the island. Over the years the gate had been improved upon by numerous Uzumaki, using the use of seals to advance the protection that the walls provided. Strengthening seals, to keep the stone strong, endurance seals, to prevent the stone from fall to the elements, and numerous other seals, including barrier seals. The information on each one was kept as a closely guarded secret by the acting clan head. The wall's barrier seals could be activated at a moment's notice, and in the event of an emergency, have the ability to go into lockdown, preventing anyone from leaving the Uzumaki clan compound. However, most of the barrier seals are left deactivated as they require a constant charge of chakra to remain active. After the clan head stared at the walls that had protected him as a child, he signaled the guards on wall duty to open the gates. With barely a sound, the gates swung open, showing the quality of the gates and the fact that after so long, they still worked as if they were made yesterday. As he was halfway through the gate, a shout from the guards drew his attention. "Kai-sama, there is a large object flying towards the village. What are your orders?" One of the guards that were stationed in one of the guard posts at the gates asked, referring to highest-ranking superior in the area. The clan had thought for several moments before addressing a nearby clan member. "Go and bring our strongest shinobi to the gates. We must be ready to defend in case the object is hostile, but do not attack unless attacked first. I repeat, do not attack unless attacked first. Now go, Kai signaled the man, who left without a word to gather the men the clan had requested. Kai then turned around to face the potential threat that was slowly getting larger. He could make out the wings that were giving the object lift, indicating that it may be some sort of bird. Obviously it wasn't a regular bird. If it was a bird, as the guard tower wouldn't have pointed it out, the possible bird was already far larger than any other bird should be at the distance that it was from the Uzumaki compound and was already getting larger. The clan head felt the chakra signatures of the shinobi he asked for assembling behind him. Kai could only hope that they would be enough to ward off the incoming object should it prove to be hostile. Within a minute later, and Kai could finally make out the object. It was an eagle, an incredible large one, most likely a summoned creature. The eagle had a black coat of feathers that adorned its body with a set of pure white feathers that covered its head and a vicious set of claws. Kai also managed to spot two figures that appeared to be riding the eagle. One was small, suggesting that it was a child, while the other was larger, suggesting an adult, though most likely the parent of the child. As the summon came closer, it began to slow down, signaling that it was going to land. Kai gave his men the order to make space to allow the giant bird land inside the compound, even though it was dangerous to let a possible enemy land in the compound. The bird nor its riders had showed any hostile actions. "See, kid, you made it, so stop complaining about the ride." A distinctly male voice sounded. From the voice it sounded like a young man, though Kai couldn't be sure as the view of the passengers was blocked by the massive eagle that was staring at the numerous Uzumaki clan members. The beast was obviously uncomfortable with being here. "Are you kidding me?" another voice said, though this one sounded incredibly younger than their companion, and was definitely a girl's voice. Kai thought the voice resembled Mito's incredibly. "Do you have any idea of how fast we were going? I almost fell off twice." "Stop complaining, Mito," the first voice reprimanded. Hearing the name of the second voice snapped Kai into action. He began to approach the eagle, wanting to see someone who he was sure was his daughter. He didn't get far before the eagle reacted. Seeing someone approach its rider, the summon snapped at Kai, causing all the Uzumaki members to tense and begin to advance on the bird, wanting to save their leader as well as take down a possible threat to their clan. The eagle gave a screech, rearing back and flapping its wings, stopping the advancing shinobi and causing some minor damage to some shinobi who didn't use chakra to stick to the ground fast enough. The eagle continued to flap its wings until its male rider called out, causing the large summon to stop. "Basama!" the male voice commanded. "Stop. They didn't do anything." The large bird of prey grumbled, causing many of the shinobi to go on guard again before it spoke, surprising many of them. "As you wish, Naruto-sama," the eagle, Basama, said, though everyone could see that eagle didn't feel sorry at all. The eagle simply stared at the surrounding ninja while its riders disembarked from its back. The man, Naruto, came down first. His appearance was quite strange, long, white hair and pure white EY-. Kai froze and all thoughts stopped. It couldn't be. He wasn't meant to be real. He couldn't be real. Kai's father had told him of the man that was now before him. How he had power to rival the gods, the ability to take over the world if he so chose. Yet here he was. Naruto Ōtsutsuki, the true ancestor of the Uzumaki and the father of Kazama Uzumaki. Kai was so shocked that it wasn't until his fellow Uzumaki pointed it out did he realize that he had been staring at the man for 10 minutes. The history of the Uzumaki was something that everyone born into the clan learns about from their parents. Every child learns how Kazama Uzumaki started the clan during the early years, when chakra was first brought to the world by Rikudo Sennin. How Kazama first came to what would be later known as the Land of Whirlpools and settled on the land with his family, which would later be known as the Uzumaki clan. This tale was told among many to the young of the clan. The tales were told to children so that all knew the basic history of the clan, to prevent that same history from being lost. However, what only the main family knew, or those in line to be the next clan head knew, was that while Kazama is the creator of the Uzumaki clan, it was his father that was the first Uzumaki. Naruto Ōtsutsuki was told from clan head to clan head, or so Kai's father had told him. Kai, personally, found this hard to swallow when he found out he had grown up hearing about Kazama Uzumaki and how he found the clan and was the first Uzumaki. It was hard to believe his father when the man was, at least partially, contradicting what the entire clan held as true. Kai had never held much truth in the tale. Who could? A man of supposedly godlike power that had lived for millennia. It was something that anyone would have a hard time digesting. Kai had told his father that he was crazy and was going to dismiss what he said as crazy, thinking that the man might be going senile in his old age. That was until his father roughly grabbed him around the shoulders from behind and, with surprising strength for a man that was nearing a century, turned him around and slammed him into the wall with enough strength to shake the clan head office they were in. Kai's father, Eladama, looked into Kai's eyes with the most serious expression one could muster on his face and said, in a tone that sent shivers down his son's spine, words that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Kai, you may take many of my words as fact and many as false, but if you ever believe a word I say, believe this. Naruto Ōtsutsuki is a man that makes you look like dirt under an ant's fingernail. He has the ability to level the land, crush mountain and tame the seas, but never has he done any of those things in anger. If he ever comes to this island, must do everything in your power to not anger him. Or may Kami have mercy on you. Because Naruto certainly won't. Kai and Eladama had never spoken of that moment again, even in private. But over the years Kai had eventually stopped believing in Naruto Ōtsutsuki, having never seen the man in question and coupled with the passage of time, making him forget the seriousness in his father's eyes when he spoke to him, caused him to stop believing in the supposed living legend. But no, Kai had to rethink those thoughts now that the man was standing right beside him, the two of them gazing out over the Uzumaki clan's territory. The two of them were looking from a balcony on the clan head residence, with the building resting on a hill. The two were simply looking out over the Uzumaki clan as the sun slowly set on the horizon, ushering in the night. Naruto still in his brown cloak with his hood down, while Kai had taken off his armor and swords, taking to wearing a tunic with long pants instead. You know, before today I thought you didn't exist. The younger of the two broke the silence. When my father first told me about I thought he was going senile. He's probably laughing at me from Kami's realm. The clan head gave a small chuckle at the comment, while Naruto managed a small smile. Eladama thought I was a myth as well like you did, except he flat out denied that I was real. He called me a liar and a fake. During that time I had just come out from mourning a close friend, and didn't appreciate Eladama call me out like that, and to my grief turned to rage when he called me a liar, and to my shame, I lashed out, resulting in your two-san developing a different image of me than previous clan heads did. He most likely passed this on to you, which is why you have been acting like I was going to explode for the past hour. Naruto commented, not taking his eyes off the horizon. Kai's father had insulted him just after he came out of kind of 1-month mourning process for his brother that he did every year. It wouldn't always go on for a month, and sometimes it would go on for a day or a week. It all depended on how Naruto was feeling at the time. During this mourning time, Naruto would hole himself up in the monastery where they grew up and simply look at Hagoromo's grave or remember the good times that the two of them had together. Either way, he would be cut off from the rest of the world when that happened. It was a time when Naruto tried to block everything else out other than his memory of his brother. And you are not in mourning now? Kai said with hesitancy laced in his voice and tenseness in his shoulders, but on Naruto's nod, that tenseness left, and Kai gave an audible sigh. There are several things about the clan I wish to know. Naruto asked the clan head, finally turning to face him with the clan head doing the same. Why were the Senju not guarding your daughter on the mainland? Surely that would have made more sense than sending you own men. Kai gave a sigh. The Senju and Uzumaki relationship is not what it once was, the younger man admitted. But Sama Senju is pushing for me to send him more than just seals for support. He wishes for me to start sending men to fight the Uchiha and Hagoromo clans, threatening to end the alliance we have, though he doesn't openly say it. Kai shook his head before turning back to look out over the Uzumaki clan. I sent my own guard because I didn't fully trust that Butsuma wouldn't do something drastic. Turns out that I was right. From what you've told me, But some most likely let those Hagoromo clan members through deliberately as a way to put the pressure on me but to also to get me angry against the Hagoromo clan. If they had succeeded in their plan, I would have sent my strongest to go wipe out the Hagoromo clan and get my daughter back. This gets Butsuma what he wants, the Uzumaki involved in the fights. If I gave attack the Hagoromo clan, then by extension I am attacking the Uchiha clan, as the two have an alliance of a sort. This would cause the Uchiha clan to begin to attack us and incite war, something that I don't want. The other theory is that Butsuma would attack the kidnappers after they have my daughter, saving her and causing myself, and by extension the Uzumaki clan, to be indebted to the Senju. Butsuma can use this to draw my family into the war. Kai finished with clenched fists. And the worst thing is I can't do anything. There is no evidence to link Butsuma or his clan to this. He could play all of this off as an accident. What is worse is that I can't break off the alliance, as much as I hate to admit it, but we need the Senju clan. We need them as a first line of defense, and as a deterrent for any possible enemies, just as the Senju need us for our seals against the Uchiha and Hagoromo clans. Our alliance is not as strong as it once was. Kai released a sigh that spoke of regret and sadness. It is for this reason that I was forced to sign Mito over to the Senju clan in marital agreement with the clan head's eldest son. The Uzumaki clan head immediately tensed and waited for some sort of reaction from the man beside him, ranging from a burst of anger to him leveling the entire clan. What he got instead was a sigh, one of disappointment, directed towards the clan head. You put your duty before your family. The older of the two stated. Why? Because it was the only thing I could do to make sure I keep my family safe. I couldn't have asked another to do what I could not. That wouldn't have been the right thing. Kai explained, still feeling immense guilt over what he had done. It was something that he had wished he would never have to do, but he did, and to his own daughter no less. Ever since he first made that contract, he had been having nightmares over how his daughter would be treated. Each one was worse than the last. I can but to rest some of the fears that I sense within you. The first Uzumaki spoke, surprising the clan head with his words. I have met the one that Mito will be wed with, Hashirama Senju. He is a good child, wishes for equality for everyone. He will at least treat your daughter correctly, the way that she deserves. Naruto confirmed. He knew from his experience with Hashirama would treat Mito right. He would treat her as a person, not a prize or trophy. Naruto's words seemed to ease the clan head's worries, at least slightly. Thank you for that, your words do offer me some comfort. The clan head thanked, but Naruto just waved the man off. The two talked in relative silence about matters in the world before they were interrupted by the door to the balcony opening and a person stepping out onto the outdoor area. I am sorry for interrupting you too, San, but I require your assistance with Mito. She refuses to go to sleep and my presence does nothing for her. The person spoke. Naruto focused on the person and took in her appearance: long red hair that went down to her mid-back, violet eyes, and wearing a black kimono with black pants to go with it. Those articles of clothing did nothing to hide the fighting experience she had from Naruto's eyes, however. The woman moved with slow, calculated steps that showed deeply ingrained fighting experience. If Naruto had to guess, he would say that she would have lean yet firm muscles underneath her loose clothing. It is all right, Kashuma, I'll deal with Mito. Kai spoke to the woman, his daughter, before turning around to address his guest. I am sorry to stop our conversation, Naruto-sama. Kashuma's eyes widened at her father addressing someone as Sama before instincts from lessons past made her school her features. Naruto simply rolled his eyes at Kai. The man thought that he was being respectful when in reality, all he was doing was annoying him. Perhaps we could continue it tomorrow? Kai asked. Naruto gave the man a small smile. Of course, Kai, we will continue it tomorrow morning, Naruto said before he turned to the only woman in the immediate vicinity. Kashuma. Naruto addressed the person, causing her to turn to face him. You are the next clan head, correct? The woman gave a nod and Naruto gave her a small smile in return. Good, in that case there are some things that I should give you. Kai raised an eyebrow at this, as did Kashuma. What did he have to give them? Naruto simply gave a small smile before he lifted his left arm out of his cloak and pushed back the sleeve of the kimono he was wearing underneath the cloak to reveal a vambrace around his forearm, and what appeared to be the miniaturized arrays for storage scrolls drawn onto the skin around the bicep. From what the Uzumaki could see, there were several of them all around his bicep. Each storage array was shrunk until all that was there was the kanji for store. Amazing! Kai murmured as he looked at the small ceiling arrays on Naruto's body, none of them overlapping. Kai managed to refrain himself from touching the arrays, but not by much. The arrays were perfect, not a line out place. It was amazing. Kashuma simply stared in awe. Body seals were much more complicated than regular seals because of the small amount of chakra that all things exert to some extent. Most of the time, however, this isn't a problem, as the amount of chakra being released is either too small to interfere or the wrong chakra required. Sealing arrays place on the body required to have additional parts added onto the finished seal to adapt it to the human body so that the chakra that is constantly exerted doesn't interfere with the sealing. There are Uzumaki who can do this, but they are all in their 50s or 60s, not in their 20s like the man before them, or so Kashuma thought. As with the body seals, miniaturized seals were also made in the Uzumaki clan, but again this was done by the best of the best, people who are usually in their 50s and 60s. To miniaturize a seal, one had to be able to write seals with incredible precision. This was because for the arrays to be miniature, the seals that made up the array had to be small, as the name suggests. The skill that it takes to be able to write seals at the size required was enormous. Combined with the fact that they were both combined into one showed the skill Naruto had in Fuinjutsu. It was easily enough for him to rival the greatest seal masters that the Uzumaki clan had ever produced. Both Kai and Kashuma were knocked from their staring by Naruto pumping chakra into one of the storage arrays, resulting in a small puff of smoke. As the smoke cleared, both father and daughter saw that Naruto's hand was now containing a scroll. The scroll itself wasn't large, around the same size as the irregular storage scroll. What caught their attention was the small kanji for sealing arts on the ends. Naruto then extended the hand with the scroll in it to Kashuma. The future clan head simply stared at the scroll for several seconds before she mutely pointed from herself to the scroll and back again. Naruto gave a nod, and with a small childlike scream, Kashuma snatched up the scroll before greedily opening it, with her father looking over her shoulder. The redhead's eyes started to rove over the contents of the scroll, greedily sucking in line after line of information. The more the female read, however, the wider her eyes went as her brain processed the information before she turned to the one who presented the scroll with a wide-eyed look. Naruto simply chuckled and explained. Every once in a while, I like to send the clan scrolls on Fuinjutsu to help them with research. Naruto gave his reasons. As you have read, that scroll contains my notes and instructions on how to make a communication array as well as an illusion array. The communication array will allow people to talk over long distances, but they must be connected by via connection lines, and it can't be on something like a piece of paper. It would have to be on something like a wall, where the chakra connection won't be broken easily. The illusion array works similarly to genjutsu in that it tricks people into thinking something is there even though it isn't. However, it can only hide things so far, or make people see stuff that isn't there. It doesn't have the power to harm someone mentally like actually genjutsu does, so be careful in how you use it. I've listed other things to know about the two arrays in the scroll. When Naruto finished his explanation, he observed his audience's faces. Kai's was one of amazement, while Kashuma had one of amazement and shock, most likely because he gave it to her and not her father. If that is all, I will retire to my room for the night, and will leave at first light tomorrow. With that, Naruto left, leaving a shocked clan head and his successor. True to his word, Naruto did leave at first light. Without a word, he simply walked out of the compound, with gate guards being his only witness. Mito would be sad at first at her rescuer leaving before she could say goodbye, but it was quickly forgotten when she was told that she would be marrying Hashirama Senju in order to tie the clans together and create a stronger alliance. After that, Mito was quite upset before being comforted by her father. Mito then threw herself into training, not wanting to have to be rescued by anyone ever again. Around 6 years after Naruto left the land of whirlpools, Hashirama and Madara would create the first hidden village, Kanahigakure, resulting in the other lands to create shinobi villages of their own, sparking clans across the world to begin to band together. Multiple clans would create hidden villages, all in a bid to try to match the might of the combined Senju and Uchiha clans. This resulted in the largest amount of alliances the elemental nations had ever seen. A year after that, Mito and Hashirama both wed at the Uzumaki clan compound before the two of them moved to Konohagakure. It was shortly before this that Madara would leave the village and swear that he would raze it to the ground. Yet throughout all this, Naruto would never show his face, never visit or check on his former students, or that little girl that he rescued. He was simply going to let them live their lives, without his interference. It was what he had done with his own kids, and it was what he would do now. He had heard about Hashirama and Madara's hidden village. Madara leaving and the Senju Uzumaki marriage had happened, but he still didn't visit, believing that his interference would cause something to go wrong. So he didn't interfere. If only he knew what not checking on his students or Mito would do to him in the future. And it would be 12 years before he realized that. But by then, the damage would already be done. Naruto let out a sigh as he floated above the sands of the Land of Wind, traveling towards Shikaku's home cave. The world's oldest man was in quite a sad mood. Having just come out of his mourning period for Hagoromo, he spent a month blocked off to the world while Shikaku did the same. He was sure the other Biju did as well. Sometimes, Naruto honestly envied his brother, being dead while he was forced to wander the earth for an eternity. Naruto refused suicide as a way to end his problems. It was a coward's way out, and he knew that he would never be able to face Hagoromo or his mother if he did. Suicide was for the shameful, and he wasn't shameful in the least. Yet that didn't stop how much he wished he could visit Hagoromo and his wife. He missed his sons. He wanted to be able to be with his mother, to be able to talk to her before the Jubi happened. Naruto simply gave a heavier sigh and banished the impossible dream from his head. It would do him no good to think about it, especially when he was meeting Shikaku. The last Otsutsuki sometimes wondered how the one-tail would have survived if he didn't spend some time with the large tanuki. It was only after the first few years did he realize how lonely the sand raccoon must have been when he realized that it had stopped attacking villages after he began to talk to it. Focusing back on the path he was taking, Naruto traveled over the final sand dune to reach Shikaku's home. The man expected to see a giant hole, and that was the Ichibi's home, with maybe the Biju's head out to greet him. Instead, he was greeted by the disturbed sand of a collapsed hole. Naruto was immediately on guard. Shikaku had never moved his home in the entire time that Naruto had begun to visit the Biju, and if he did, Naruto was certain that the tanuki would have informed him first. The cave couldn't have collapsed on Shikaku, as the Biju could simply will the sand to do as it wished, so Shikaku couldn't have moved because the cave collapsed. The only other option was that Shikaku was taken, and that left a bad taste in Naruto's mouth. Anyone that could take a Biju was bad news, even if Shikaku was the weakest. Naruto started to mentally calculate what to do in the situation he found himself in. The person that took Shikaku would have to be shinobi. They were the only ones that would be able to be powerful enough to be able to take down a Biju. In order to find Shikaku, his best bet would be to ask the nearest village if they knew anything about what happened to Shikaku, if they saw the Ichibi traveling anywhere. With his plan sorted for the moment, Naruto took off towards the east, towards the nearest town. It only took Naruto an hour to reach the closest town, stopping just outside the borders before walking the rest of the way as to not attract attention of the citizens of the town. Walking into the village, Naruto observed the place, taking in the many mud-sand buildings and quite lively populace. It was quite strange to see these people living so close to Shikaku, so joyful. He had visited this place once before, and the people here were scared, constantly looking towards the west where Shikaku's home was located. Walking towards the nearest person, an old man leaning on a building, Naruto asked the man a question. "Excuse me, can you tell me why everyone here is so joyful? The last time I was here, it was completely different." The old man gave a chuckle before he turned to Naruto, but get startled a bit by his hair and eyes. The man managed to compose himself a bit before answering. "You must have been living under a rock for the past month, young man. The elderly man commented, and Naruto had to hold back a small smirk at the man's words. He was closer than he thought. The old man continued. The Ichibi is gone, he explained joyfully. Gone! Naruto exclaimed, surprised. How could the Ichibi be gone? Didn't you hear? Hashirama Senju gathered up the Biju and gave them to the hidden villages, all of them except the Kyubi. The man exclaimed happily, ignorant of the Naruto's inner rage growing. All of those demons gone. Happy days. Yeah. Naruto murmured darkly. Happy days. With that he turned around and began to leave the village, hands clenched into fists. As Naruto walked, his thoughts were only concerned with one thing. Hashirama broke a rule. Now I'll break him. With that, Naruto set out on his new goal. Before he could find Hashirama, however, he needed to find Kurama and make sure that the Biju was okay. He could only pray that he wasn't too late. Hashirama Senju observed his once friend from the other side of their battlefield, on the northern border of Fire Country. What was once a lush forest of trees was now turned into a barren wasteland stretching for miles in diameter, the result of the power the two shinobi had clashing again and again. Several hundred meters away was a large valley that was carved out from one of Hashirama's attacks, Chojo Kabutsu, top transformed Buddha, turning what was once simply a river into a waterfall. Madara hadn't changed much in the years since his departure from Konohagakure, the Uchiha looking mostly the same with the exception of his much darker attitude. Madara wore a black high-collared, long-sleeved mantle along with a white belt with armor plating on his chest, back, shoulders and thighs, while wielding the gun by that Naruto-sensei had given him and Akama, both held in either hand. The spiky-haired man had kept his Sharingan active during the entire confrontation so far, to keep a small advantage over Hashirama, but that meant little when the entire battle so far had been long-range ninjutsu. Hashirama was carrying the scroll of seals attached to the small of his back, an armor that covered similar places to Madara's own, that was placed over a simple black suit. A sword was in its sheath as his waist. Like Madara, Hashirama had not changed much since the two had parted years ago. The Shodai Hokage and the outcast Uchiha had been fighting for hours, Madara using chakra to power his Sharingan in order to control the Kyubi, and Hashirama used his Mokuton Jutsu to combat the Nine-Tails chakra. Their battles had traveled across the Land of Fire, from the eastern seaboard to the northern border, where they were now. Currently, Hashirama had managed to pin the Kyubi beneath several tentacles of wood that held the beast to the ground with only its head being free. Fortunately for Kurama, Madara, seeing that his puppet would now be useless pinned, realized his control of it. Unfortunately, the large amount of wood chakra was suppressing its own, making it impossible to use any chakra-related attacks. It didn't stop him from struggling against the wood that was wrapped around him, or snarling at the one that had controlled it as well as the one that was restraining it. The wood chakra wasn't strong enough or potent enough to make the nine-tailed Biju lose consciousness like it would to its less powerful brethren, though the Kyubi loathed calling them that. They were too weak to be related to someone as strong as it. Why, Madara? Hashirama called out to his former friend. Why would you do this? Why destroy Konoha? Why not make them see you in a different light? Become the Nidaime instead if becoming Hokage means so much to. The Senju pleaded with the man on the opposite side of the battlefield, hoping to stop his pseudo-brother to stop this before anything else happened. Madara simply shook his head as if he was disappointed in Hashirama. It would be no use, Senju. The Uchiha will always be in the shadow of your clan, repressed and shunned. Me becoming Hokage will not change this, it won't even come close. Unless the Uchiha become equal to the Senju, but my clan won't listen. Konoha was, and is, a failed experiment. The only thing to do with it now is to cleanse it, along with the copies to ensure that this mistake never happens again. The Uchiha replied in a monotone voice. Konoha is not a failed experiment, Madara. Hashirama defended his home with vigor. It is what the world should hope to be, a beacon of light and understanding. Why would you want to destroy that? Hashirama asked his once friend and ally. I have been enlightened, Hashirama. Madara revealed. The tablet of the Naka Shrine has shown me that Konoha will not be able to spread the peace that we both want. The history of humanity has always been embroiled in war, hatred and misery. Konoha can only last so long before it too is swept away and consumed by the hatred that floods this world. The tablet showed me what was needed in order to survive. It showed me the only moments of true peace that the elemental nations ever experienced, and I intend to recreate that peace, Hashirama. Why don't you join me? Together, Hashirama, we will be able to stop the fighting, the war. No child will ever have to see the battlefield, either will adults. The world will be completely at peace. Madara tried to show Hashirama that his dream was still the same, simply in a different form, and show that Konoha was doomed. But Hashirama didn't see it Madara's way. And you think that to obtain your kind of peace that you need to wipe out hundreds of people that have done nothing wrong other than come together in a way that isn't to your liking? Hashirama raised his voice with his anger at what Madara was saying, how he was so causally throwing away everything that they had worked for, that he had worked for. Hashirama was not about to waste years of blood, sweat and tears so Madara could get what he wanted. He wasn't going to let his loved ones and all those counting on him die. I will never join you, Madara, not until you realize what you're doing and come home. Madara gave a dark sort of chuckle. You think that Konoha is my home? That the Uchiha clan is my home? Madara questioned. They cast me out, Hashirama, exiled. The Uchiha clan will never be my home. Konoha will never be my home. These are facts, Hashirama, and you would do well to remember them. Madara was about to rush his opponent when something peculiar happened. The Kyuubi stopped thrashing. It stilled and raised its head as high as it could, looking towards the west, in the direction of the land of wind where Sunagakure was in its final stages. Both opponents stopped solely focusing on each other and gave a small amount of attention to the Ninetales. Whatever could gain its attention and get it to stop thrashing like it was could be a problem for either one of them. Both humans watched as the Biju's eyes widened for a split second before it dissolved into laughter, not the kind of funny laughter, but the dark kind where those on the receiving end knew that something bad was coming. Hashirama and Madara were immediately on guard and gave more attention to the Kyuubi. Finally, after several minutes of dark laughter, Madara grew tired. Kyuubi! The Uchiha snapped. What are you laughing at? Immediately, the Ninetales stopped laughing and began to snarl at the Uchiha. Apparently its laughter hadn't made it forget just who it was around. The Kyuubi eventually stopped growling and a sinister smile broke across its fox-like features, one that told the two men before it that the demon knew something that they didn't. You do not command me anymore, Uchiha, so I'd watch my tongue if I were you. I don't know what either of you did, the beast said with the grin still on its features as it addressed the founders of Konoha. But one of you seriously pissed off the wrong person, and I feel slightly sorry for you, but I will enjoy watching as he exterminates you both like the rates you are. What are you talking about, Biju? Madara demanded, his eyes flashing dangerously at the attitude of the Kyuubi. The Biju didn't answer Madara's demand though, but instead continued to show Hashirama and Madara just how far its simile could stretch. Madara was about to ask again with an added threat of being enslaved again before an eerily familiar voice spoke from on top of the wooden tentacles that held the Kyuubi. The voice was cold as ice, yet the anger that was almost palpable within it almost made both ninja flinch. One rule, I gave you both one. Rule. Both Madara and Hashirama's head shoot upwards to look at the new arrival, only for both of them to reel back in shock as the person that it came from. Standing atop the prison that held the most powerful of the Biju was Naruto-sensei. Someone the two shinobi hadn't seen in years. The man was still wearing his brown cloak that was wrapped around his body with the hood up, but both Hashirama and Madara could make out the white eyes that glared at them both with anger. Naruto-sensei. Hashirama breathed out. It was quite enough that he didn't think that anyone would hear him. Evidently he was wrong as Naruto's head snapped to focus solely on him. The reaction he got from the man wasn't one that he was expecting. Never address me as Naruto-sensei again, Hashirama! Naruto snarled out. You lost the right to call me that the moment you broke one of my rules, he hissed. Hashirama was taken aback by the venom in his teacher's voice as well as the accusation that he broke one of his sensei's rules. What rule could he have possibly broken? Sensei, I have broken no rule, why would you say that? Hashirama said, hurt by his sensei's accusation. There was nothing he had done wrong. You think you haven't done anything wrong, Hashirama? Naruto narrowed his eyes at the senju. What do you call the enslavement of other beings, Hashirama? Wasn't that one of the first rules that I gave you? Naruto screamed. You captured and enslaved the Biju, Hashirama. You turned what I gave you into something that enslaves others. That is what you did, Hashirama, no matter which you put it. Hashirama's eyes widened as his sensei told him what he did, and Hashirama immediately went into explaining his actions to his mentor. I did it to protect those I love, Naruto-sensei. They Biju constantly attack towns and clans whenever they feel bored, and I didn't want that to happen to Konoha, where my family is, where those I love live. I then used them to prevent open war between the hidden villages and keep the peace. Isn't that what you want? Peace. Hashirama tried to explain. It seemed to work for a minute. The hatred in Naruto's eyes dimmed slightly as his brain processed those words and put himself in Hashirama's position. It was a full minute before Naruto spoke again. While I understand your position, Hashirama, Naruto said with significantly less anger, you still took away and indirectly enslaved several living beings. I will discuss what to do with you later, but I will tell you this now. You will not be sealing the Kyuubi, Naruto said, knowing that Kurama wouldn't like his name given out. While it was unspoken, it was obvious that Naruto was done with Hashirama now, and the ancestor of the Uzumaki and Hyuga turned to look at his other former student, Madara. As he laid eyes on him, the hatred in Naruto's eyes lit up again and he spoke with heat. What do you have to say for yourself, Madara? For what reason would you remove the free will of a living being? Naruto asked with narrowed eyes. That is simple, Naruto-sensei, Madara said with no fear whatsoever. I have been enlightened, I have seen the way to truly achieve peace, and in order to do that, mistakes must be eliminated to ensure that no one copies that mistake. The hidden villages are those mistakes and I, therefore, must eliminate those mistakes. However, I know that I cannot do this alone, so I went to the Kyuubi for help. When the beast didn't accept, however, after I showed it the reasons why, it accepted. The Nine Tails growled as the Uchiha spoke, obviously not agreeing. Naruto was silent throughout Madara's explanation, allowing the Uchiha to speak, as was Hashirama. When he finally finished, Naruto questioned the Uchiha about something that stood out. Where did you achieve this enlightenment, Madara? Naruto questioned. He had a feeling he knew what Madara was talking about, and his suspicions were confirmed when Madara answered his question. From a tablet sacred to my former clan, the Uchiha answered. The answer immediately put Naruto on edge. The tablet that Madara spoke of was familiar to Naruto, but he had to be sure. Naruto could only hope that he was wrong. What was on this tablet, Madara? He demanded with his voice as cold as ice. This was not the time to beat around the bush. Enlightenment, sensei, Madara replied in the same monotone voice, deflecting the question. The true way to achieve peace in the world. And what is this way? It was Hashirama that spoke this time, directing his question at the one he thought of as a brother. Power, Madara answered simply. Hashirama was surprised at the Uchiha's declaration. Both Madara and himself had talked about understanding and being upfront when they were younger, and to hear that Madara wanted to gain peace in such a manner was a shock to the Senju. Naruto, on the other hand, wasn't as surprised as Hashirama was. Indra's way of peace had been about power, much like Madara's, while Hashirama's way was much like Asura's own. While part of Naruto was surprised at the similarities of the situation that he was in now to the one that he was in millennia ago. Did you know that there have only been 2 true times of peace on our world, Naruto-sensei, Hashirama? Madara questioned. Naruto felt a knot settle into his gut at Madara's words. Whatever the Uchiha was going on about wasn't good. Do you know what both of these times had in common? Madara questioned again before he continued, answering his own question. They both had a single power that was supreme over all. Rikudo Sannin and the Usagi no Megami, the Sage of 6 Paths and the Rabbit Goddess. 2 powers that passively ruled over the world, inciting peace across the land whether through fear or worship. Both were viewed as gods. I intend to do the same, become someone with unequal power to unite the lands and bring people together. But first I must wipe the slate clean, so to speak, remove the stains from the earth before reimagining it. This is why I must destroy the hidden villages starting with Konoha. They are incorrect and therefore must be removed. When Madara finished, Hashirama was in shock, his mouth wide open, trying to figure out how someone that he considered a friend could change so much. To think that violence, on such a scale, was the answer to peace. Naruto, on the other hand, was feeling barely restrained rage at Madara, at how the Uchiha had interpreted the image of his mother and brother. Naruto now knew without an inch of doubt what tablet Madara was talking about. The tablet was originally a gift for Indra, detailing about the history of the world before Hagoromo introduced chakra, including his mother's infinite Tsukuyomi, as well as details about the battle against the Shinju from Hagoromo's point of view. Though it didn't have much information on what he did because Hagoromo was focused on sealing the Jubi, however, Indra added information to the tablet about the Mangekyo Sharingan, including how to activate it, use it, and the abilities it possessed, as well as how it had the ability to control Kurama, something that Indra found out when he tried to use the nine-tailed demon fox against Azura in one of their battles, though Azura managed to break Indra's concentration enough for the Kyuubi to break free. Naruto theorized that the reason the Sharingan possessed this ability was because of the link that both the Biju and the Sharingan had with the Jubi's eye. The Sharingan was part of that eye while Kurama was part of the Jubi's chakra, so the Sharingan had some sort of power of the Kyuubi because it possessed that largest amount of the Shinju's chakra, meaning that it would have the largest reaction and be more susceptible to the Sharingan, while Shikaka might be able to throw off the ability the Sharingan has over the Biju. Though this was simply a theory and Naruto had no proof that it actually worked. So Hashirama, Naruto-sensei, Madara said, bring Naruto out of his thoughts. You both can either join me in my goal or be destroyed by my might. The choice is yours. Madara gave the both an ultimatum. A choice of either him or them. Madara, Hashirama said. Years ago you chose family over our dream with reluctance and resignation. Now I must return the favor. You threatened my family, Madara, my loved ones. For that, I will never forgive you. Hashirama spoke with steel and anger in his voice, though there was a touch of sadness as well. Madara didn't show any sign that he even turned to Hashirama. Instead, he focused on Naruto, who was still standing on top of the makeshift prison that trapped the Nine Tails. Madara, Naruto began, his eyes drilled into Madara's own, the shadows from his hood giving him a chilling effect. Never in my lifetime have I seen someone who has fallen so far from grace than you. Naruto's eyes and tone gained a disappointed edge, like Madara had failed some sort of test that he couldn't see. Before that vanished, and the eyes crept back into Naruto's gaze and voice. For so blatantly breaking one of my rules and then having the arrogance to twist the images of others to suit your needs, I will kill you. The last part was said with venom and heat as Naruto unloaded pure killing intent into the air, though not enough to kill, as he was going to do that himself for someone who would so blatantly insult his memory of Hagoromo. A spark of worry flashed through Madara's gaze before it was quickly covered up by a small smirk. Sensei, you must be getting on in your old age to not realize that both myself and Hashirama have far surpassed your own level. Added to the fact that you are getting old means that you stand no chance against either myself or Hashirama. At Madara's words, Naruto tilted his head slightly so that his eyes were covered by the rim of his hood, though Madara and Hashirama took it as the confirmation of Madara's words. He's right, Naruto-sensei, Hashirama said, speaking to Naruto. You retreat and I'll finish off Mada dash. Hashirama was cut off by the Kyuubi laughing, not dark laughter like before. No, there was something the nine-tailed demon fox found incredibly funny. What are you laughing at now, fox? Madara said with slight anger. The Kyuubi was simply laughing like it didn't have a care in the world, like it had heard the funniest thing in the world. Madara found it quite insulting that the demon thought that it could laugh at a time like this. Like with before, at the sound of Madara's voice commanding it to do something, the Kyuubi stopped laughing and started to snarl in Madara's direction. If I wasn't restrained, I'd tear you limb from limb, you stupid flesh bag, while injecting you with my own chakra and watch as your flesh peeled itself from you bones. The demon growled before it gave Madara another dark grin. You say that you know of the Sage of Six Paths, correct, human? Amusement was clearly readable in the Nine-Tails' voice. So tell me then, did you know that he had a brother? The Kyuubi said, praying that Naruto would let him tell these stupid humans so that he could see their faces, especially Madara's. He wanted to see the shock and hopelessness on the Uchiha's face. When no reprimand came, the Kyuubi howled with delight on the inside. This was going to be more fun than it had in centuries. At the Nine-Tails words, Hashirama became open-mouthed. He didn't know that Rikudo Sannin, someone who was a god in every sense of the word, had a brother. It was mind-blowing, and though he thought the Kyuubi was lying at first, he knew that it was the truth when Madara confirmed it with his response. So? I already knew that. Was that supposed to shock me somehow? The Uchiha said in a monotone voice, though he raised his eyebrow an inch in question at the Kyuubi's words, wondering if that was meant to throw him off somehow. But as soon as he saw the demon's grin spread that little bit wider, Madara knew that he said exactly what it wanted him to say. No, the demon said, still grinning. The fact that he's still alive is... The words rocked both Madara and Hashirama to the core. The brother of the Sage of Six Paths is still alive. Words could not describe how either of them were feeling. It was akin to shock, surprise, amazement, and disbelief all at the same time. But neither got a chance to fully soak that in as the ninth Biju spoke again. But do you both want to know the best part? Inquired the fox with that same cat-like grin on its face, which was in a way teasing both Hashirama and Madara. He is standing above me. Two sets of eyes widened as the fox finished speaking and shot to the only person it could be. Naruto. There was silence across the barren land as both Hashirama and Madara tried to soak in what they had just heard, that their sensei, one that they had been around for 2 years, was one of the founders of the modern ninja world. Both were in shock with neither really knowing what to do in this situation. Though as it turned out, they didn't have to, as Naruto made that choice for them, pulling his hood back, revealing his long white hair and pure white eyes with the new addition of a pair of horns that sprouted from his forehead. You wanted the power of a god, Madara. Naruto spoke to the Uchiha. Well then, witness the power of a god! With that, Naruto leapt off of the wooden tentacles and onto Madara with a fist raised for a punch. Madara's eyes widened as he remembered what his former teacher could do with a single punch, and he leapt away from the impact area, but was not fast enough, as shockwave that resulted from Naruto's fist hitting the ground knocked the Uchiha away 100 or so meters from Naruto. Madara managed to flip in midair and successfully land on his feet. He then dropped the weapons he was holding in both his hand, fired off as jutsu towards Naruto. After all, he couldn't use jutsu. Katon, Karyu Enden, fire release, fire dragon flame bullet! Madara shouted as a massive pillar of fire spewed out of his mouth before rushing towards Naruto, roughly taking the shape of a dragon as it flew. Within seconds the flames washed over Naruto's position and completely engulfed it in an explosion of flames as the technique exploded when it hit its target. Madara felt slightly disappointed when he saw his sensei was taken out so easily. There was no way that Naruto was the brother of Sage of Six Paths. He'd read from the Naka shrine that Naruto Ōtsutsuki was meant to be incredibly powerful, having held off the Jubi while his brother sealed it within himself. There was no way that Madara's inner monologue was cut off when an explosion of rock and fire happened from the impact zone of his technique, spraying rock, dust and fire around the area, though Madara was far enough that none of the debris hit him. Madara picked up his weapons and was immediately on guard. He was sure that he hit Naruto, so what was that? Madara idly noted that Hashirama was stuck between intervening and letting Naruto and himself fighting it out, if the expression on his face was any indication. The Senjin never had been very good when it came to suppressing emotions. Turning back to the slowly settling dust cloud, Madara activated his Sharingan before quickly morphing it into the Mangekyo. If the Naruto in front of him really was the brother of Rikudo Sannin, then Madara couldn't afford to pull any punches when it came to fighting him. I have been alive for over 3 millennia, Madara, a voice from the dust cloud said. Do you think that such a simple technique would take me out? Madara heard a questioning tone, though passed it off as rhetorical. The dark outline of a man became visible within the dust cloud, though the still floating dust cloud obscured the one behind it. A sudden gust of wind quickly blew away the dust, though from where it came from Madara couldn't say. Naruto's cloak was gone, showing the clothing that the white-haired man was wearing underneath. The ancient man wore a light, full-length kimono with a pattern of 6 black magatama around a high collar and dark pants. Twin vambraces that covered the entire forearm were visible along with simple sandals on his feet. "Madara, do you remember my last words to you both when you were kids?" Naruto asked the man across from him. "Yes," Madara replied. "Always have your secrets." "What does that have to do with this?" Madara questioned. "Did you really think I showed you everything I could do when I was training the two of you? I said to the two of you that I never learned ninjutsu. Did you really think that I was telling the whole truth?" With that said, Naruto's eyes began to glow a fiery red as the heat in the air began to rise. The ground began to crack slightly. Haze was visible in the air as the landscape was scorched. Then, with a simple exhale, Naruto blew out a plume of fire that was easily the size of the Kyuubi. Madara only got a second to react, dropping his kama and grasping his gunbai in 2 hands and channeling chakra through the shaft, creating a transparent blue barrier that curved around him. It was just in time, as less than a second later the fire was upon him, licking at the edges of his shield and burning the very air he was breathing in. But then it was gone and Madara let the shield drop with a pant. The heated air had affected him a lot more than it should have, making it harder to breathe and concentrate of the technique he was using. But Madara's ability made itself known when less than a second later as the Uchiha regained his stability, and with a roar, fire off a Mangekyo Sharingan technique. Amaterasu, Heavenly Illumination. The Uchiha yelled towards Naruto, black flames of hell roaring out of Madara's eyes, consuming anything in their path. That was until Naruto held up his hand, one eye glowing fiery red and the other having a white pupil with the rest of the eye being black, held up his hand and halted the flames with just a simple movement. Madara's flames seemed to hit an invisible wall and quell themselves. Madara realized that his technique was doing no good, and quickly cancelled it. "What is going on?" the Uchiha thought in mild panic. How can he simply dispel the flames of Amaterasu as if they were nothing? Is this truly the power of a god? Madara quickly shook his head to dispel himself of those thoughts. No, the Sage of 6 Paths proved that even a god can die, and the man before me is no god. Without uttering a word, Madara quickly scooped up his kama and ran towards his former sensei, and launched himself in the air. With a swish of his gunbai, Madara released a powerful wind that sprayed sand and dirt, covering in the area dust particles, obscuring both opponents' view of each other. Though, Madara thought as he reached the apex of his jump and began to descend. I have something that he doesn't. Superior eyes. The Uchiha thought with triumph as he tracked Naruto through the dust cloud, thanks to his Mangekyo, and descend on him like a hawk on prey. Madara raised his kama in preparation to strike at his foe. However, just as Madara's kama was about to strike Naruto, it was blocked. The burst of air that resulted from the two objects meeting with such force blew away the dust cloud that blocked vision, and allowed Madara to see what blocked his kama. It was a staff of a dark blue color that, if Madara had to guess, was made out of Naruto's chakra. Madara's eyes widened at the feat. Being able to bring pure chakra into the world was no easy feat. It was something that few could do. Some people even thought the ability was a bloodline. While chakra strings and other small amounts of pure chakra manipulation was something that most could do, bring out so much chakra that it has the ability to become solid and hold up against a physical object was not. If Madara wasn't in a life and death situation, he would be shocked. Unfortunately for Madara, he underestimated Naruto's speed and was hit when Naruto twisted around and slammed his chakra staff into the side of his face with enough force to send him tumbling across the barren wasteland, dazed. Naruto slowly walked up to Madara, taking his time as he knew that the spiky-haired Uchiha was finished. He was nowhere near powerful enough to challenge Naruto. Naruto, however, stopped when the Kyuubi let out a roar of anger and defiance. The man quickly turned his head to face the Biju and found a red-headed figure inscribing seals around the prison of the beast with Hashirama talking to them. Judging by Kurama's roars, what they were doing wasn't good. Naruto quickly abandoned the down Madara and charged as the two people near the Ninetales, targeting the obvious Uzumaki seal master who was most likely planning to seal Kurama inside themselves. As far as Naruto knew, An Uzumaki would be the only one with the body to be able to hold back such a powerful creature. Any other person would have to be a baby. Naruto was so focused on charging towards the Biju that he didn't see the wooden dragon that barreled into his side and launched him further away from Kurama. Naruto flipped and righted himself before he landed on his feet and turned to the direction the technique came from, and came face to face with Hashirama. The Senju looked pained, like he didn't want to do what he was doing, but Naruto didn't buy it. Hashirama could stop what he was doing and simply let Kurama go and not disturb, letting the Biju have its peace, but instead he was imprisoning it. "I am sorry, sensei," Hashirama had said, but Naruto kept his face blank as he stared at his former student. "But Madara controlling the Kyuubi proves that it can't be let free. What if someone else takes control of the Kyuubi while I or another skilled Mokuton user isn't around? I can't let that happen." Naruto simply gave a small snarl at the Senju. "If you truly wanted what was best for you, stupid village, you could have simply asked the Biju to not attack you. All you have done now is ensure that as soon as the Kyuubi gets free that your precious hidden village will be the first to burn." Naruto shot back at Hashirama, but it appeared that the Senju wasn't listening. "It is a demon, sensei, a Biju. It cannot be reasoned with," Hashirama said. "Don't not call me sensei, you stupid fool. How do you know that it can't be reasoned with? Have you tried? I think the simple fact that it can talk is enough proof that it can be reasoned with. Do you?" Naruto growled at the Shodai Hokage. "It has destroyed millions of lives, perhaps even billions over its existence. Nothing you can say is going to change the dash." Hashirama was gut off when Naruto, full of anger at Hashirama's belief on the Biju, launched himself at the Senju, in order to get him to stop talking and get to Kurama to free him. A staff materialized in Naruto's hand while Hashirama pulled out his sword, and the two weapons met with a clang as their users attacked one another. Naruto leapt back and slammed his foot into the ground, utilizing his enhanced strength to shake the ground, then, while Hashirama was off balance, rushing in to strike the Senju in the stomach with his chakra staff. Hashirama tumbled backwards but managed to land on his feet, where he then sheathed his sword as he realized that Naruto would have the advantage with his strength. The Senju clan had then rapidly went through hand signs before stopping as three large dragons erupted from the earth. The dragons then targeted Naruto before they began to fly at him with tremendous speed. Naruto simply stared at the approaching dragons with disinterest before his eyes glowed a dusty brown, and he held up his hands so that the palms faced each other. A clear cylinder quickly formed between Naruto's palms, one end being in between his palms while the other was extended out to point at the wooden dragons. A small light formed at Naruto's end of the cylinder before the light expanded rapidly and shot out the other end of the cylinder and hit the wood dragons, vaporizing them. That sequence took all of 2 seconds to accomplish. Naruto stared at Hashirama, who had a look of shock on his face, with a blank stare. "You want to fight me, Hashirama?" Naruto intoned. "Very well, you will feel my wrath." With that, Naruto began to rise of the ground and slowly float several meters in the air as the clouds darkened and thunder boomed. The wind began to pick up, the clouds began to swirl and lightning light up the clouds almost constantly. Then there was silence. Like the world was holding its breath. Everyone around the world, from animals to humans, civilians to shinobi, adults to children, went silent, as they felt the pure power being unleashed. The power of nature being bent to the will of a mortal. The power of a god. But at that moment Hashirama knew none of that. All he knew was that he needed to do something quick. He flipped through hand seals as the wind began to gather around Naruto, who was still hovering in the air. The Senju clan had quickly finished his last hand seal, and shouted out his technique. Mokuton, Makujin no Jutsu, would release, would human technique. Hashirama shouted as a massive figure stepped out of the earth. It had an Oni-like face with a wooden dragon wrapped around its torso. Hashirama was located on the bridge of nose on the massive technique. The Senju clan head was too late to stop whatever it was that Naruto was doing as he was finished. Hashirama couldn't see Naruto anywhere on the figure that he had created, but frankly, it was figure he needed to worry about right now. It was large as Hashirama's own technique, with the basic outline of a human, though that was where the similarities ended. Whatever it was that Naruto made was primarily made out of chakra, with arms that came out of its shoulder blades and bent over the shoulders. It had an Oni-like face that was more demonic-looking than Hashirama's and had horns growing out of its forehead. Hashirama was drawn out of his observation by a crack of lightning. The enormous chakra construct held out its hand, palms facing each other, much like Naruto was doing earlier, and the winds began to swirl faster and faster. Within less than 3 seconds, a tornado was formed between Naruto's hands. The natural disaster spun with such force that it began to carve itself into the ground. Suddenly, the tornado was engulfed in black flames that created a haze around the disaster. Before the tornado was launched at Hashirama, the Senju quickly ordered his wooden human technique to get out of the way, as all it would take was a glancing blow for that tornado of fire to tear his technique apart. Once Hashirama had dodged the attack, he immediately ordered his battle avatar to rush Naruto's own. The wooden human quickly complied and rushed the other avatar, trying to tackle it to the ground, only to be held up by 4 arms. With a quick thought, Hashirama ordered the dragon wrapped around the torso to bite at the head of the enemy avatar. The dragon did as it was ordered and launched itself at the head while hands of the avatar was busy. But Hashirama quickly found out that the avatar Naruto was using to fight him was far more flexible than his own, as a spear sprouted out of the body of the chakra figure and pierced the neck of the wood dragon, halting it from attacking the head. The Senju clan head quickly went through other hand seals to true and take Naruto by surprise, wherever he was. Mokutan, Mokuryu and dash! Hashirama was cut off by a sword made of chakra that sprouted from the stomach of Naruto's battle avatar. This wasn't one of Naruto's attacks, as the color of the sword was different to that of Naruto's battle avatar. The theory that it wasn't one of Naruto's swords was proven correct when the sword was sliced upwards and split straight through the head, splitting it in 2, allowing Hashirama to Madara's Susanoo on the other side. The arms that sprouted from the shoulder blades then let go of Hashirama's wooden human technique before they then shot backwards and grabbed Madara's Susanoo on the upper arms. The head of Naruto's chakra construct then sealed back together, before another face sprouted out of the back of its head, so that it was now facing both Hashirama and Madara. Both mouths from opened and spewed lava over both of the other avatars. Hashirama quickly leapt off his avatar as the lava splashed onto where he was last sitting and quickly ate through the wood technique. Madara simply weathered the lava, his Susanoo's armor being enough to protect the Uchiha from the mixture of fire and earth. Unfortunately for Madara, Hashirama jumping away meant that he was now the prime target for Naruto's chakra avatar. Madara quickly found out that the opposing avatar was quite flexible when one of its feet came up and slammed into his Susanoo's chest, while the extra arms let go of what they were holding, resulting in the Uchiha to be launched almost 2 kilometers away from the force of the kick. His Susanoo protected him when he impacted the ground. The chakra construct then turned to look for Hashirama, only for a forest worth of trees to begin to wrap around the avatar, constricting it and limiting its movements. The many tree roots and limbs then transformed into wood dragons that begin to draw the chakra out of the construct. That plan was quickly halted when the avatar suddenly dissolved, the chakra that created it dispersing into the air harmlessly. Back on the ground, Hashirama let his technique disperse before he quickly started to gather nature chakra. He would need everything he had for this. His sage marking quickly appeared on his face as nature chakra was introduced to his chakra pathways, heightening his already impressive attributes even further. It was thankful he did that because otherwise Hashirama would have been taken out when his sensei burst out of the ground with a raised fist, intending to punch Hashirama in the chin. The Senju clan head was fast enough to lean back so that the fist harmlessly passed in front of his face before, in lightning quick movement that was enhanced by sage mode, Hashirama kicked his sensei in the ribs, knocking him across the battlefield. Naruto skidded across the ground once before he regained his footing, coming to a stop on 2 feet. The last Otsutsuki frowned at Hashirama, having been taken off guard by his former apprentice's ability to use nature chakra. The kick was faster than he expected. Shoving that thought out of his mind, Naruto focused his main problem, that being Hashirama. The Senju was preventing him from free Kurama. With his eyes glowing electric yellow, Naruto launched several bolts of lightning from his fingertips, each on mimicking their completely natural counterparts exactly. Hashirama was hard-pressed to dodge the bolts, even with Sage Mode active. The human body can only move so fast, even when enhanced. Moving faster than the speed of light isn't something that the human body is meant to do naturally. Hashirama eventually began to feel the strain of moving his body at such speeds. His joint began to ach and his body began to hurt as it protested against the rapid movement. So it was obvious that the man was eventually going to get struck by one. Fortunately for him, however, he was able to move so that instead of striking him in the stomach, like it was aimed to do, it struck him in the thigh instead, conducting along the metal thigh guards that he had on, which also lowered the power behind the lightning. This still didn't do anything to stop the pain that Hashirama felt as the lightning jumped for his metal plating to his body. The Senju let out a horrible scream of pain as the electricity played havoc with his nervous system before he collapsed to the ground, and occasionally twitched, being the only thing to show that he was alive. Thankfully though, Hashirama's clan had placed special coatings on all of their armors to help lower the effects that lightning has on metal. This special coat is the only thing that saved Hashirama from becoming paralyzed from the waist down, the coating lowering the conductivity of metal as well as how much heat it absorbed. Once Naruto was sure that Hashirama was incapacitated, he quickly began to search for wherever Kurama was, wanting to free the Biju as quickly as possible, knowing that the sealing of the Nine Tails cannot be far from completion. This was quickly proven true when Naruto heard a roar of pain from Kurama. Snapping his head around, Naruto was only fast enough to watch as Kurama's body turned into red-tinted chakra that was quickly absorbed into a seal that was placed on the stomach of the Uzumaki woman. Sprinting over to the woman, Naruto arrived just in time to catch her as she fell over from exhaustion. Naruto placed the woman on her back and took in her face. The first thing that caught his attention were the two buns on either side of her head that her hair was braided into. 3 clips held back her hair on her left side and a purple mark on her forehead. Naruto remembered who she was. He had rescued her around a decade ago and comforted her father when he expressed his doubt over marrying Hashirama Senju. It was Uzumaki Mito. Mito! Naruto breathed, stunned that she would go through with this. Why would you do something like this? As if she could hear him, her eyelids began to move before they shot open. But what greeted Naruto wasn't what he was expecting. Instead of the pupil-less eyes that he had remembered Mito having, Naruto was greeted by slitted red eyes, similar to that of Kurama. As her eyes opened, Mito let out an almost guttural roar as a visible layer of red chakra exploded around her, launching Naruto away with the force. Mito began to scream in pain as the red chakra began to get denser and slowly begin to solidify, creating a kind of cloak around her with the vague shape of a fox with a single tail. Once Naruto had recovered from being launched, he immediately began to study what was happening to Mito, and the transformation she was undertaking. It only took a few seconds for Naruto to analyze the situation and curse under his breath not only at Mito's stupidity, but at Hashirama for wanting to contain the Biju, as this was partially his fault as well. Obviously, Mito had tried to seal all of Kurama's chakra inside herself, but it wasn't working. The chakra of Biju is too strong for whatever seal Mito had used, and the chakra was now breaking the seal. This presented a multitude of problems, one being that because Mito had fully assimilated the Kyuubi's chakra into her own chakra network, and any attempt to remove said chakra will now cause her immense pain. While Naruto could have removed the Biju from her if it was, say, Saiken, the Six Tails, but Kurama simply had too much chakra for Naruto to remove from Mito for her to survive the process. The pain would become too much and kill her. If that wasn't enough, Kurama's chakra was actually poisoning Mito, as all foreign chakra, with the exception of Sage chakra, is poisonous to the human body in large amounts. The body doesn't know what to do with the foreign chakra when it encounters it, so it tries to reject it, but if too much foreign chakra is in the system, it shuts down. This is one of the reasons why when someone's chakra network is damaged, no one will try to heal it, as the body would try to reject the incoming chakra, and this would put more stress on the chakra network, halting any sort of healing. Naruto's only option with her surviving is for him to tighten whatever seal she had placed on herself to seal Kurama, and in the process most likely get Kurama to hate him forever. The second problem is that Kurama is most likely in a rage right now over being sealed inside something and is going to do everything in its power to break free. This meant getting someone to undo the seal, or kill the one in which it was contained, therefore Mito. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he focused on the situation. He needed to get in close, seal Kurama back into Mito. To do that he needed to get rid of the chakra cloak that was surrounding her. What techniques it is. At least he can show Hashirama how it's done. With a gathering of chakra, Naruto thrusted both of his hands forward as large roots burst out of the ground and started to travel towards the transforming jinchūriki, hoping to restrain her, only for her to jump over the roots and sprout another tail. Naruto cursed when he saw that. Obviously Mito's choice of seal was worse than he first thought if it was really breaking that quickly. The jinchūriki then started to sprint towards Naruto's position, while the horned man's eyes glowed two different colors. One eye was dark green, with the other eye being a lighter green. Naruto quickly lifted off the ground as massive tree roots burst from the barren land, each one trying to catch Mito's possessed form as another tail grew, bringing the total to 3 tails. Eventually, one managed to wrap around one of the legs of the chakra-cloaked Uzumaki woman and slow her just enough for other roots to begin to solidify their grasp around and begin to suppress Kurama's chakra. That was until a large-scale fire technique was launched at the roots, burning many of them to cinders and weakening the others. This was enough for Mito to burst out from the vines with a 4th tail. Naruto could now see various bones growing on top of the chakra cloak, a skull being the most prominent. Snapping towards where the technique came from, Naruto spied Madara sprinting across the barren wasteland, towards Mito in her chakra cloak. A roar from the slowly forming 9 tails brought Naruto's attention back to it. Naruto was about to use more roots to cover up the jinchūriki and begin to suppress its chakra again when Madara landed right in front of it. As soon as he did, it stilled for a second before Naruto noticed a Sharingan appearing in the eye socket of the formerly raging jinchūriki. Madara then pointed a finger up at Naruto with the 4-tailed figure following where the finger was pointing. It then grew another tail before opening its mouth and forming a Baijidama in its maw. Naruto immediately used his powers over wind to move out of the way of the tailed beast ball before it could be fired. Luckily he did, because not a second later, the Baijidama flew right through the spot where he once was. As soon as that happened, Naruto knew he had to end this now if he wanted to save Mito. Quickly gathering up the most amount of chakra he had in years, not wanting to leave anything to chance, Naruto's eyes glowed pure white. With an upward thrust of his hands, Naruto made for large wooden walls that boxed in Madara and the controlled jinchūriki. The walls were easily 10 meters thick and meet in the shape of a square that was several hundred meters high to prevent Madara from somehow jumping over it. Quickly flying so that he was above the only opening, Naruto held his hands out in front of him as a clear cylinder appeared pointing downwards, that had a spark up near the end closest to Naruto. Naruto quickly began to charge up the technique, aiming to destroy Madara as well as take out most of Kurama's power that was protecting Mito so he could get closer. Madara, noticing what his sensei planned to do and mentally commanded his puppet to attack Naruto. It did as complied and quickly formed a Baijidama in its mouth before quickly firing it at Naruto. Naruto, noticing the Baijidama approaching, simply smirked at the incoming projectile, before it smashed into him, causing the technique he was half-heartedly creating to explode, along with the tailed beast's ball in a spectacular explosion that caused a large shockwave to explode out from the center. Madara simply stared up at the explosion, not believing for a second that it was over. He was right, as from the smoke came slim, tiny objects that glinted off the light from the explosion and were quickly descending towards his position on the ground. However, as they got closer they began to stop until they were right in front of him, hundreds of tiny little shards of what appeared to be a clear shiny material. As suddenly as they appeared, the crystal-like shards suddenly began to group together until they formed a large, squarish mirror, roughly the size of a man. That was as far as Madara got before Naruto appeared from the mirror. The white-haired man then leapt out of the mirror and, with a single punch, launched Madara into the wooden wall of square he was boxed into. Acting quickly, Naruto quickly created several large roots that burst from the ground and restrained Kurama, binding the Biju, and made its chakra slowly begin to retreat back into the seal. As that was happening, Naruto kept an eye on Madara while the Biju chakra receded. The Uchiha was slowly getting up from the ground and trying to shake off the fuzziness that must have appeared as the result of Naruto's punch. Naruto made a few chains out of chakra grow out of his back and make their way over to the Uchiha and wrap him, pinning his arms to his sides as well as his legs. Naruto then lowered the wooden walls and, to his surprise, found Hashirama leaning heavily one leg just outside where his wooden walls used to reside. The Senju clan head's body had an occasional spasm as a result of the excess electricity still residing in his body, but his eyes were firmly locked onto Naruto, with his eyes drifting over to Madara for a second before snapping back. Hashirama took several weak steps forward, wincing with each one, his body having not fully recovered for the lightning. "Where is Mito?" Hashirama demanded. Even though his body was weak, his eyes told Naruto that Hashirama was willing to go again if he didn't answer. "She'll be fine," Naruto said in a monotone voice. "Though she will need to relax for several days after this, I'll have to tighten the seal that she put on herself as well, but other than that she'll be fine." Hashirama tensed at the sound of Naruto's voice before relaxing slightly when he heard that his wife would be okay, but his gaze slowly drifted over to the restrained Madara, who was looking at the two of them with his Mangekyo. "What will we do with him?" Hashirama questioned, looking at the fallen Uchiha who was still restrained and looking at the two of them. Either of them noticed him eyeing a piece of rubble near Hashirama. "Kill him," Naruto said simply, while Hashirama looked at his former mentor, momentarily shocked at the bluntness of his words. Hashirama was about to reply but was cut off when Madara disappeared with a puff of smoke and a piece of rubble took his place which fell to the ground. Hashirama just managed to lean back as a sword scraped its way across his chest, cutting an inch or two through the armor he had over his chest and into his skin, drawing blood. Because he leaned back, the strike didn't kill Hashirama, but because his body, especially his legs, was still weak from the electric shock from earlier, his legs gave out from the sudden movement, unable to support the sudden weight change. As he fell onto his back, Hashirama managed to look up in time to see Madara, his former friend and unofficial brother, coming at him, with a back swing, the sword that he must have kept as backup for the majority of the fight, glinting as it made its downward descent towards his neck. Madara's Sharingan gave his eyes a cold look, like he didn't feel anything as the sword made its closer to completing the beheading strike. Hashirama closed his eyes as he waited for the end, knowing that his body was much too weak to put up any sort of fight against the sudden assault from Madara. He only prayed that Mito somehow made it out alive. Just as he closed his eyes in preparation for the end, Hashirama's ears were assaulted by a scream pain, though it wasn't his own. Opening his eyes, Hashirama was greeted to the sight of Madara screaming in pure agony as what could only be lightning coursed throughout his body. The pure white bolts jumped between the metal plates. Madara screamed for a full minute before the smell of burning skin began to assault Hashirama's nose, but the Senju paid no attention to it, too focused on the former friend in front of him that was in excruciating pain. 30 seconds later, and Madara's screams stopped. Whether he was dead or had simply run out of air to scream with, Hashirama didn't know, but it was soon after that the lightning stopped. Madara's body didn't move for several seconds before it collapsed in a boneless heap on the floor, allowing Hashirama to see his sensei behind where Madara was once standing, hand extended, smoke coming off the open palm. Hashirama's mind went blank for several seconds. His former best friend, and brother in all but blood, had tried to kill him, and his sensei, who he thought hated him, had saved him and most likely killed Madara in one of the most painful and brutal way possible. A cool feeling settled on his chest. Hashirama looked at the area and found his sensei, hands glowing green, healing his chest from its wound. Hashirama simply looked in shock as his former sensei healed him. It was several seconds later that Hashirama's voice started working again. "I thought you hated me?" Hashirama said softly, still in shock over all that had happened with the last 5 minutes. Naruto didn't say anything, but Hashirama knew that the ancient man had heard his words. Several minutes later, though, once he had finished healing Hashirama, the man spoke. "After you told me your reasons, I realized that all you wanted to do was protect those that mattered to you. It was a terrible way to do it, but your heart was in the right place. Naruto gave a hollow chuckle. It would be a bit hypocritical of me if I hated you for wanting to protect your family when Madara did the same, and I was fine with that. Hashirama then looked towards the body of the Uchiha that was still smoking a meter away. Did you have to kill him? Hashirama asked with obvious regret in his voice. Couldn't you have just restrained him? I could have tried to reason with him. Naruto gave a sigh before answering. No, Hashirama, I had to kill him. Naruto admitted, seeing Hashirama about to open his mouth. Naruto held up a hand to hold off the inevitable comment. Madara was insane. His goal to wipe out people for peace was proof of that. The best thing I could have done for him was kill him. Though I'm not going to admit that I wanted to make the bastard suffer for all of the trouble that he was the cause of today, Naruto said honestly with anger in his voice. Naruto then looked up over to where Mito was and saw that all of Kurama's chakra had finally receded into the seal. Deciding to get it over with, Naruto walked over to where Mito was being held by tree roots and manipulated them to lift her up and hold her still, while he looked over the seal on her stomach and decided how to tighten it. It only took several minutes to decide how to tighten it. Hashirama came over midway through and looked over Naruto's shoulder to see what he was doing, but Naruto paid the man no mind. Knowing what to do, Naruto bit his thumb, consciously holding back his healing ability on his thumb, then, with his eyes glowing blood red, drew the blood out of his thumb, and then onto Mito's exposed stomach before arranging them into tiny seals on her stomach. Once the blood was arranged how he wanted it, and it had dried onto Mito's skin, Naruto pressed his open palm onto her stomach before summoning chakra through his hand and onto the blood seals on Mito's stomach. He finished the sealing with a yell and a thought. Fuin! I'm sorry, Kurama. XX Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki faced a living legend in the shinobi world, Naruto Ōtsutsuki, in the early hours of the morning. Mito had only recently woken up, and after a quick conversation informing her of what happened, as well as confirming what the Kyuubi said was true, Naruto had taken this as his time to leave. The sun was just beginning to make its way into the sky and cast its rays onto the former battlefield, the waterfall at the end of the newly made valley, promising that life will come back to the area eventually. Hashirama and Mito stood with Madara's body being carried in Hashirama's arms and a sword without a sheath in Mito's, while Naruto stood opposite with a face that was now hornless. Are you sure you don't want to visit Konoha? Mito asked for seemed like the seventh time, a small smile on her features. I promise you'll like it. I'm sorry, Mito. Naruto apologized with a sad smile on his own face. But I'm not going to be visiting for a while. I need some time to think. Naruto really didn't know what to do anymore. The Senju and Uchiha were working together now, so they didn't need him. The Uzumaki were fine. He wasn't going to visit the Hyuga while they employed that caged bird seal. And the Biju. Hashirama had told Naruto that he simply gave the Biju to the away to 5 other hidden villages excluding Konoha, Iwagakure, Kumogakure, Kirigakure, Sunagakure and Takigakure. The Senju didn't know what they did with the Biju once he had handed them over. They could be sealed into people, objects, or enslaved somehow. Even if he did find them, however, could he rescue them? If the Biju were too connected to their host, then it would be impossible to remove them without the host dying. Then there was the fact that he didn't know where any of the hidden villages actually were. Naruto just needed to think. Perhaps the answer would come to him if he meditated a bit. What are you going to do with Madara's body? Naruto questioned while eyeing the sword a bit wearily. No one had cleaned that sword, yet there was no blood on it when Naruto was sure that it had cut Hashirama's chest, spilling blood. I'll bury him here, Hashirama said with sadness. It would be fitting to bury him in the last place we ever fought. The Senju looked around the area, most likely choosing where to bury the Uchiha. Naruto simply shook his head before looking towards the rising sun. Sometimes he wished that the roles were reversed, that he had died and Hagoromo had lived on. His older brother would have been much better at this than him. I'll visit you both, Naruto finally said before he added a few more words to his sentence with a small smirk on his face. I expect to be the uncle to many children. Mito blushed at the insinuation, while Hashirama gained a smile that reminded Naruto of when the Senju was younger. Only if you do the same, the Hokage replied. Naruto gave a small chuckle at that before his eyes glowed yellow-orange color, and he disappeared in a blur of speed. Hashirama then walked towards the waterfall that had been artificially created to bury his friend while Mito stayed where was. She knew that Hashirama needed to do this himself. She only handed her husband Madara's sword before he walked off. 2 full days after the battle at what was now known as the Valley of the End, inside a hidden tomb behind the waterfall, a pair of Sharingan snapped open before the right Sharingan faded. The owner of the, now single, Sharingan lifted the lid off his tomb and sent it crashing off to the side with a crash. The figure then created a shadow clone, getting it to take their place in the tomb before they replaced the cover back on top of the tomb. The figure then swiftly exited the tomb, only pausing to take a sword that rested on a small pedestal, placing a hinged shadow clone in its place. It would be almost a century before people realized that Madara Uchiha survived his battle with Hashirama Senju. As Madara exited the tomb and into the sun, he looked at the sword he had taken before smirking to himself. I got what I wanted. The Uchiha thought before walking towards the mountain's graveyard, with a sword that held several pints of Hashirama Senju's blood, and therefore, his DNA.